please notice the exit signs, and in case of an emergency, leave as quickly and carefully as you can to go through the exit to leave the building. It's a smoke-free and vape-free school district. Smoking and vaping is not permitted in the building or anywhere on school grounds. This is also a hate-free and bully-free school district. So we're now to the first part of our business meeting, which is item C, board consent agenda.
Thank you, President Hayes. The administration recommends the approval of board consent items reflected in Schedule C1 and C2.
Can we do that separately because the treasurer's report, I wanted to change the language of the resolution a little bit. So let's do the minutes, do C1. So you recommend item C1?
The administration recommends the approval of board consent items reflected in Schedule C1.
Okay, is there a motion to approve item C1? Trustee Felicetta, second by Trustee Ross. Questions or discussion? None? All in favor? C1 is unanimously approved.
Mr. Pacini didn't vote on that. Trustee Pacini did not vote.
Okay.
Yes, here he is.
I vote yea.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Unanimous.
Then it's unanimously approved. And now item C2. You're going to make the recommendation, but the language I think should be, hold on a minute, here we go. The resolution is resolved. The Board of Education acknowledges that it received and reviewed the treasurer's report for December 2025 at its last business meeting on February 11, 2026.
I thought it was February 4th.
What?
It's February 4th.
February. Yeah, February 11.
4.
2 weeks, yes. February 4th, correct. So, resolve, the Board of Education acknowledges that it received and reviewed the treasurer's report of December 2025 at its business meeting on February 4th, 2026. So is there a motion to approve that resolution? Trustee Felicetta, second. Trustee Calderon. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Yes, it's unanimously approved. And now, superintendent's report.
All right, thank you for your patience. Get right to it. All right, welcome to our February 25th business meeting. I wanted to start our meeting today by first acknowledging and thanking and showing my sincere appreciation for our custodial and maintenance staff. The last couple of days have really been difficult days with regards to the blizzard we just endured. We got over 2 feet of snow in our community. Not just that, when you start imagining the square footage of our property and our parking lots, the amount of snow removal that needed to take place over the course of the last 2 days, it really was a monumental task. So I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all of our maintenance crews, our custodial crews who are here working feverishly through the storm. Many of us sort of were snuggling up at home, and certainly a lot of kids were enjoying a snow day. You're supposed to, that's not the response, thank you. But yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge them and talk a little bit about how we sort of make the decisions on closures and delays, because this morning was somewhat of a stressful morning. So I wanted to sort of go over sort of the process by which we make decisions to either engage in a school closure or a delay. First, decisions aren't made in isolation. So we're part of a cohort of superintendents that represent neighboring school districts that extend as far east as to West Hampton. Obviously, we go to the North Shore, and we all communicate with each other. First and foremost, our primary objective is to make sure the schools and our campuses are safe for the passage of our buses, and that sort of extends to our communities. So, this morning was one of those outlier mornings, because typically the forecasts are pretty accurate. If you look at it the day before, or within 12 hours of the actual weather event. Yesterday, we all commiserated together and spoke in the afternoon, and looking at the forecast at the time, it seemed like it called for some mild precipitation, but no accumulation in the morning. And considering that the temperature was going to be above freezing, we made the decision to have a delayed opening out of an overabundance of caution, because we thought things might not be so predictable. So at the very least, let's buy some time for our maintenance crews to prep the campuses. Later in the evening last night, the forecast didn't change very much, and so we kind of stuck to our guns. Some people contemplating an additional closure for the day, but you understand why we're sort of hesitant to close schools for an entire day. At that point, the forecast had not changed. All that changed this morning. I got a very early correspondence from our facilities director, Frank Pirro, who did a fantastic job being on site for the entire duration of the storm. And early this morning, our parking lots were in great shape. And so we decided to proceed with the delayed opening, as did our neighboring school districts. And sure enough, as soon as it became time to commute, it got pretty horrendous out there with a couple of inches of accumulation. So fortunately, as much as the morning provided stress for our commuters and our community, we were practically incident-free. There was one high school student who was driving to school, was involved in a fender bender. Student is fine. And one of our buses got caught in the snow and needed to be towed out of the snow. Not because it slid into an embankment, but simply because it lost traction. So considering the inclement weather we just went through, I thought it was the best case scenario, and certainly the tides turned as the day progressed. The reason that we sort of, really are contemplative in making these decisions is because our state aid is sort of attached to instructional time. School districts are required to offer 180 instructional days, which translates actually to hours. It's computed in hours. For secondary schools, that represents 990 minutes of instructional time. For our elementary schools, it's 900 minutes. So we want to be sure that we hit those benchmarks, even with snow day, with closures. And typically, we're able to do it, manage it. We do have days in our calendar that are typically off for staff and students. But if we exceed a certain number of snow days, then we start using those days to make up that instructional time. So prior to the storm, we still had not lost any snow days, as we call them. But what happened on Monday was the governor issued a waiver to school districts because a state of emergency was declared, meaning that school districts did not have a choice whether to open or not, and so that day would not count against our instructional day requirement. What happened subsequent to that correspondence was that there was some sort of guidance that was very ambiguous. I'll quote it. It said, should districts be forced to close for additional days, they could apply to waive those additional days individually with consideration of the rest of the school year schedule. So that language is somewhat ambiguous to us. So what we've done in terms of update our community and staff is we've already worked with our attorney to submit our application for the waiver for both days. Right now, the correspondence from the state indicates that we'll get a determination in August, which is too late. So we're waiting for further guidance from the state to see where we stand in terms of whether or not the Friday before the Memorial Day break is going to be open for us as a school district or remain as a day where students and staff have off. So I'll keep the board and community posted. I thought it was important to kind of talk about sort of the dynamics of school closures and how that can have an impact on school aid. And in order for you to qualify for state aid, you have to hit these benchmark hours of instruction. Having said that, one of the things that we're considering, and I sent the correspondence out to the community, is the idea that we switch over to remote instruction. So what that may look like, and we're going to send another reminder out to the community tomorrow with regards to the should we go to remote instruction, what can be expected from our instructional program. So first and foremost, we have a one-to-one electronic device initiative in our districts. All of our students K-12 have Chromebooks. Elementary school kids, K-5, don't take their Chromebooks home, but what we're going to do is, in anticipation of any impending inclement weather is send the Chromebooks home so the kids can access their Google Classroom and do some work on this remote day. When the school districts engaged in remote instruction, we don't lose the instructional hours. It counts towards that benchmark that the state prescribes. So the mechanisms we used in terms of communicating with kids, it's going to be Google Meet, and within Google Meet, there are different digital platforms kids can engage in instruction. The learning focus is not to provide new instructional concepts, but to reinforce concepts that have already been taught, so there'll be a lot of review. And it's going to be a combination of synchronous and asynchronous instruction. So teachers will check in with their students to provide some input and some guidance with the assignments that will be completed digitally. And we'll be following a delayed opening schedule. The reason we decided to go with the delayed opening schedule, certainly we don't want our students to be on screens all day. It also buys us some time should community members or staff members need to engage in shoveling or taking care of their respective properties. Once a 2-hour delayed schedule happens, our secondary students will follow the delayed schedule and will log into their relative classrooms at the start time of each instructional period. Teachers will have some contact with the parent, with the students, and then assign some asynchronous work to follow. For the elementary schools, it'll be something somewhat similar, where there'll be a designated time for kids to log in and have communication with their teacher, which will be followed with some asynchronous work. In terms of our staff will be available via email throughout the day. That's our support staff and administration. Obviously, we can't be available by phones because we won't be in district at the time. Certainly, we'll be checking our emails regularly to help support our parents. We also have a great mechanism with the adaptation of Parent Square, which allows for some pretty great communication. And finally, I'm not going to pretend like remote instruction is an ideal sort of modality for teaching, but we'll do the best we can. And as we embark on this journey, once again, the last time we engaged in remote instruction was during the pandemic. We'll reflect, we'll adjust, and we'll keep sort of improving our sort of approach to the instruction as time elapses. So only time will tell. But again, I just want to emphasize that while remote instruction is not ideal, we are prepared to implement it when necessary and are confident in our ability to support students and families as we continue to learn and improve together. In all likelihood, should we be faced with another school closure, the likelihood is we will go to remote instruction. My message to the community will indicate that. And again, we'll be sending out resources to parents again tomorrow in anticipation of the weekend because there is some iffy weather predicted for Monday to Tuesday. Moving on, President Hayes and I had the pleasure with Mr. Belmonte to attend the Eastern Suffolk BOCES executive briefing. We had the pleasure of having a presentation made by Brian Czarnecki. He's the executive director of ASBO, which is the Assistant President States Association for Business Officials. And he sort of went over the state budget, the state proposed budget. As you know, the governor proposes a budget early on in January, and then it's adopted later in April. So I just wanted to kind of cover some of the major tenets of what we heard. First and foremost, this is no surprise, costs are rising, it is not. Even as expenses like special education and transportation continue to grow, our state aid remains relatively flat. And that's because of the second point I'm making. It has to do with the safe harmless provision. There's a provision made by New York State so that school districts always receive some sort of increment based on state aid year after year. The initial idea behind the safe harmless legislation or approach was great because it prohibited school districts from losing aid. But in recent years, they've capped it at 1%. And 1% does not come close to really matching the rising costs of various operating expenses such as fringe benefits, healthcare, transportation, and of course special education needs. So in many respects, our district like ours, who's on safe harmless, is receiving, again, projected 1% this year. We received 1% last year and 0% the year before because we're safe harmless, which puts us in sort of a bind where we sort of have to accommodate or look for reductions in expenditures to make up for the rise in other expenditures that we have no control over. So obviously there's efforts being made to lobby against sort of this provision. I think the vast majority of school districts in Suffolk County are safe harmless districts who sort of are adversely impacted by it. There's also limited local options because of the way the state formula in terms of determining the tax levy cap is made. There's very little flexibility for school districts in terms of what could be included or not included. And long-term planning is essential. Many school districts have already faced these challenges and looked at the overall structure of the school districts. We've also had declining enrollment, which we've spoken about in the past. So we're getting to the point that not just does the declining enrollment necessitate our need to look at the organization of our school district, but the fact that because of the declining enrollment, our state aid seems to be that it's going to be pretty static for years to come. I also sat in the refit board, executive board meeting this past Monday morning, or Tuesday morning, that was yesterday, when we talked about sort of school financing and our lobbying and advocacy efforts. And the same message was delivered there. In short, I paraphrased it: while our costs continue to rise, especially for special education, state aid remains largely flat for South Country, making thoughtful planning and advocacy more important than ever. I know Vice President DeLillo and President Hayes will join me at the refit legislative breakfast, so they'll learn more about what we're doing to advocate for just a change. But one of the things that struck me the most about this was while they're making some sort of amendments to the state aid formula with regards to the cost or the aid allocated to special education students, for example, and if you're a safe, harmless school district, you're not going to benefit from any of these changes. So we're sort of adversely affected. Moving on to the 26-27 school budget process, I just wanted to give a recap. I kind of spoke about these bullet points last board meeting, but just to recap really quickly, we've been working very closely with John Belmonte. What I wanted to add to that bullet point was the fact that our entire business office practices have been revamped. We've been really shoring up our practices in collaboration, of course, with the Controller's Office and, of course, with the expertise Mr. Belmonte brings. Again, we expanded the scope of our audit. We're developing our 3-year fiscal recovery plan, and we met with Ari McCracken from the Controller's Office on February 3rd to initiate our collaboration. This was all covered in our last board meeting. To provide the board and committee with an update as to what has transpired since then, the State Controller's audit team, which is comprised of 7 members, is in our district on a day-to-day basis. We've been working with them. It certainly represents a lot of additional work for our business office, but it's work that's worthwhile because not only does it allow us to, have a second set of eyes on what we're doing, it helps us shore up our practices, as I mentioned in the previous slide. So we're really excited about the collaboration. We certainly be working well with the Controller's Office, and they will be here for the foreseeable future, which I think will add credibility to our budget process and our business practices moving forward. We're also actively looking at asset utilization, including property and facility use. What I mean by that is I kind of alluded to it before, we do have to look at the overall structure of our school district with our declining enrollment. We're waiting for our long-term demographic study to be formally submitted to us, but it looks like in the next 10 years, we're standing to lose about another 300 students. In the last 10 years, we've lost about 600 students. So in all, we're looking at about a 900 student decline in our school district. So obviously, we have to respond. So everything's on the table in terms of our facilities and properties that we own, from buildings like Head Start to our pre-K center at South Haven. Even the configuration of our elementary schools needs to be considered because of the declining enrollment. So that's something that is going to be a part of our 3-year recovery plan. We don't foresee any monumental changes, obviously, for the next coming school year, because this obviously will take some a lot of thought, planning, and community input. And as part of our ongoing budget work, we are also going to be considering staff reductions, which I know is very off-putting to a lot of people. But we sort of have to right the size of our school district and its organization. Again, with the declining enrollment, it would be irresponsible not to respond by making the necessary reductions in staff. What I want to emphasize is our mindset going into these reductions is basically, first and foremost, to maintain our academic programs to the greatest extent possible. What I mean by that is, if we start putting thresholds, for example, for elective courses at the high school, where if less than 10 students enroll, we don't run that particular course, that's something that will impact our programs, but not impact our overall core programs as a whole. That's what we mean by minimal impact. Last year, even given the staffing reductions we engaged in last year, there really was no impact on the courses we offer. The other consideration is to maintain our class sizes at manageable levels. Obviously, when we reduce class sizes, it's simple math, may go up. But that hasn't really been the case in terms of our elementary schools just yet. They've gone up by 1 or 2 students, which again still puts us in the range of 21 to 22 students on average in our elementary schools, which is still relatively low for Long Island. And this is something that we're going to discuss at a later board presentation when we talk about staffing. We're going to talk about things a little bit differently, and you'll see from tonight's presentation by Ms. Belmonte that we're changing the format of our budget presentation because we want them to be a lot more informative, and we want to paint a very specific picture so our community and board members really understand what our financial situation is. So we are going to include an analysis of our staff reductions and the impact those staff reductions had in the prior year, meaning on this year, and impact study on the impact we'll have in the subsequent year, that's 26, 27. And that will be done by myself, Mr. Hudspin, and we'll also talk a little bit about student achievement and the growth we've seen in spite of the staffing reductions. And finally, we're really in the advanced phase of budget development. And like I said, it's taken a lot of hours. And I want to thank Mr. Belmonte for working all through the weekend, even on Sunday when it was snowing, to really put this presentation together. We just want to make sure that our information is thoroughly reviewed, not just by us, by the board, but by the controller's office, who's here. And at which point we are planning sort of town hall community meeting for April 29th. That date may seem late in the budget process, but we wanted to do it prior to the budget hearing, which is the subsequent week, or 2 weeks after that. And we wanted to make sure that we were far enough along the process where we can offer solid responses, vetted data to our community who may still have questions about the budget process. But I do want to encourage anyone who's watching, people who are here, to attend our board meetings. Our board meetings have been very informative. Again, we're going to communicate everything we know, the good, the bad, and the ugly with regards to our budget process as we continue down this line, the ultimate culmination of our budget vote in May. And finally, just an update on our pursuit of special act legislation. The administration met with Senator Murray on Friday, February 6th, to seek out his endorsement and assistance with the process of seeking out the special act of legislation. That our motive is really to get this legislation embedded in the governor's budget, so it's voted on April, and we can proceed with the deficit financing. And again, I want to emphasize that what the board approved is just the ability to engage in deficit financing, not the financing itself. That will be a later resolution and vote by the board. Subsequent to that, meeting went well, and I want to thank Senator Murray for his assistance. Mr. Belmonte also spoke with Sean Giambattista, which has happened actually this morning. He is the Associate Commissioner for State Aid, and this took place, like I said, today. But his office is supportive of our legislative ask, meaning that our elected officials have already reached out to State Ed Department, and they're also working on helping us with the special act legislation, which is good news. And additionally, we met with NYSET, specifically with NYSET President Melinda Pearson and her team, as well as Mr. Brady. On Monday, February 23rd, despite our snow day, we arranged for a Zoom meeting. In the meeting, I just want to appreciate the support offered by NYSET in terms of helping us get through these financial challenges. One of the things that we're looking at as an additional strategy above and beyond special act legislation is the use of lottery aid. The school district receives about $6 million a year in lottery aid, and school districts, again, through special act legislation, can opt to have an advance on that aid that is paid back interest-free over the long term. So Mr. Belmonte is talking with NYSET's financial sort of specialist to see if that's something that we really want to pursue, and definitely weigh the pros and cons of this approach above and beyond the special act legislation. And I want to emphasize that even if we pursue the advance on our lottery aid, that would not supplant our need to engage in special act legislation. And finally, on Thursday, we'll be meeting with Talia Olaya. She is the Suffolk County Regional Representative for the Governor's Office. We were supposed to meet on Monday, but she was dealing with some snow emergencies, so was unable to meet even via Zoom. So we're just going to bring someone who's closer to the governor up with our pursuit of special act legislation. Our elected officials have already done that process for us, but this is an all-hands-on-deck approach. So I do want to thank Ms. Olaya for making herself available and for her support of our school district. So that's basically the update with special act legislation. And now I'd like to get into something a little bit more fun. During February 6th, I had the pleasure of attending our high school musical, Pippin, which was fantastic. I think the performances were incredible. Our cast, which I took a picture with. I'm always impressed by the talent of our students and our staff that put on these wonderful productions. I don't know how these students managed to learn these lines, choreography, and practice while maintaining their academics. But they did a fantastic job. The show, the first time I saw it, was magical. And basically the premise was, we all question our work in life and we want to live this magical and adventurous life, but sometimes what we have is magical enough. So I love the message behind the play, so a big shout out to all the staff members that were involved in that wonderful production. And we started some Black History Month celebrations and observances in the school district. Obviously, there's a lot of things happening within our classrooms, but I did have the pleasure of attending an assembly program for our high school students that honored John Conquest. John Conquest was an administrator, coach, and mentor here in South Country who was very impactful to many of our community members for years. The Social Studies Department hosted the assembly, like I said, that had panel speakers. That panel included retired high school teachers Margaret Bullock, Deanne Poulos, and Leroy Still, our former athletic director, retired teacher John Frankie, 1987 alumni Matthew Lucas, and current teachers Stephen Sweekley and Shariah Williams, who were students when John Conquest was an administrator, and of course our assistant principal Dan Cabell, who worked closely with John Conquest. Really well done panel discussion. What was amazing to me is really see the historical context of someone who, Mr. Conquest, who grew up really in poverty here in the community, but really rose up and really dedicated himself to the betterment of our community. So big shout out to Mr. Conquest. And I also had the pleasure of attending the assembly program at Millport Middle School, which was hosted and orchestrated by Mr. Ryer Williams. It featured art, music, skits, so really amazing event, informative event, and really the message was to empower students to be proud of their heritage, regardless of what it is. We also had the pleasure of having Sheriff Toulon in attendance, which was really nice. I want to give a shout out to Ms. Williams, Mr. Sherlock, who actually impressed us with his beatboxing skills. I haven't heard that since the 80s. And all the staff members who were present. It really was a great event. And of course, please, there's a lot of great things happening in South Country. Please follow us on our various social media handles. All these handles are available on our website. And again, I want to emphasize, if you go to our website, you click on the menu, click on the district, and then click on financial information and updates. There are all of our budget presentations are posted there. Our financial statements are posted there. We have an FAQ that's also posted there, and that's updated regularly. There's also an opportunity for community members to submit questions. That concludes my superintendent's report. I thank the board for continued support. Get back to the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. So next is trustee and advisory committee reports, and I'm going to start with our student ex officio member.
Thank you. I hope everyone stayed safe the past few days. I know the weather was crazy. At the high school, we celebrated PS I Love You Day on February 14th. It's a cause that means a lot to me, and the day overall was just beautiful. The student council hung banners, students got to write on them inspirational quotes, we cut out hearts and students got to write on them. We handed out purple lays in the morning, we sold all the shirts we needed to sell, and it was just great. And this weekend, the student council exec board will be going up to DC for our leadership conference. We'll be staying from Friday to Sunday, and I'll report back with all my findings from the conference. I'm very excited.
Thank you. I hope you have a great time at the conference and look forward to hearing the results of that and how it applies to what we're doing here in South Country. Thank you. Trustee Felicetta?
So I want to make sure I say it the right way, but I went to the Brookhaven Elementary PTA Lovebird Painting, I think it was, or Art Night, if I give it the correct people that did it. It was a really neat little opportunity for the kids to do an art night and paint it. I think it was right around
It was the Thursday before, I believe.
yeah, so it was it did a great job as always over there. I'm upset that I was not able to attend, just for conflict-wise, other Mr. Conquest, Coach Conquest to me, Black History Month event. Just on a personal note, he was probably one of the closest mentors I had throughout my time at Gulfport High School and even before and after that. So to see that he was being recognized and spoken about, I'm sure there could have been another 20, 30 people up on that stage speaking about him and what he meant to them. So it was really nice to see that. I saw a lot of comments throughout that were very positive about who he was and what he meant to this district. So just felt I should add that as well.
Trustee Ross?
Have nothing to add tonight.
Okay. How about the two, trustee Felice?
Trustee Felice or trustee Pacini, do you have anything? Trustee Felice?
Nothing for me. No thanks.
Nothing for either one.
Trustee,
Okay.
trustee DeLille?
Pretty quick. I attended both the Finance and Facilities and Health and Safety Committee meetings over the last couple weeks. Just wanted to update some of the facilities things. We are finalizing the security upgrades, including the door access and cameras, the security vestibule at South Haven and the high school auditorium. It's just a couple of punch items that just need to be finalized. The windows at Vern Kritz are installed and are beautiful. We are just awaiting the window treatments to come for installation, and then that project should be wrapped up. And the high school track and bleachers have been approved by the state and are moving forward in the process. So hopefully we'll be able to see something shortly, some renderings or something on those. Today, I attended the Middle School Student of the Month ceremony. Congratulations to all the students that were nominated by the teachers, and thank you to the teachers for taking the time to nominate the students and give them their certificates and little goodie bag today after school. It's nice to hear that the students who are honored in that ceremony are not honored because they are the smartest kids in class. They're honored because they are the kindest kids in class. So I think that says a lot about our students. One of the advantages of being at the middle school after school today was I got a sneak peek at Moana Junior, and it looks absolutely fantastic. So the cast is very excited. The teachers who are working on it are very excited. Can't wait to see it in a few weeks. And that's it for me.
Okay.
I just wanted to add one more thing before you provide your report. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our teaching staff and our staff for coming in today and braving the elements. I know it was not easy. I certainly was driving around the campus this morning before the start of school. And like I said, it was nerve-wracking to say the least. So I just want to thank our BTA, our BTAA, our CSEA, and all of our units who came in and really pushed through the elements to be here for our kids. And what reminded me is, you attending that event after school. So it's, I just want to extend that gratitude above and beyond our maintenance and custodials to, our teachers and our staff have kids, they have to commute, they have their own properties to take care of. So I really do appreciate the efforts. Thank you.
So I'm not gonna add, everything I've done has already been mentioned between going to Pippin, the Longwood Legislative Breakfast, the John Conquest program at the high school, the presentation at Riverhead BOCES, the middle school Black History Month celebration with Sheriff Tulin, and the dance and music and the program it was just amazing what the students and their teachers had accomplished there. I also did go to the girls wrestling event in the afternoon at Bellport High School on Saturday the 15th, I believe, the 14th, Saturday the 14th. An amazing event, and they were in it to win it, and I think that they prevailed very well, and maybe there could be a follow-up about what happened on Sunday when they went to Stony Brook.
Yeah, so they are our county champions, the girls wrestling team, so they're going to be traveling up to states to compete at the state level. I'll be providing a winter sports update at our next board meeting. Our boys wrestling team, I believe, finished fourth in the county, which is still a huge accomplishment because their division is super competitive. A handful of our boys wrestlers are also going to be competing at the states. And our girls track team, the relay runners, are going up to states for the state championships as well. So we have our athletic director, Mr. Sotelli, is actually he's still on the road, but driving up to Albany for the state competitions that are happening at the end of the week. And I'll provide an update to the community and the board at our next board meeting.
Okay. And then I do plan to go to the high school Black History Celebration event on Friday. And then on Saturday evening at Bellport Middle School, there's an a cappella competition, and our high school a cappella group is performing. So it's open to the public, I believe. So I'm looking forward to that one. And I'll make one comment about the legislative breakfast that I thought was particularly interesting. They had some students there who commented about their participation in some of the, I think it was BOCES programs, but there was one student who was in the cosmetology program, but she tied it in with what her real interest is, which was like in the field of social work or counseling in some manner. And she just pointed out that there's a connection between what she does in cosmetology along with where she wanted to go. And I thought about Trustee Felicetta and his interest in CTE programs, and it was an added dimension to what the CTE programs do.
That student is my student,
Oh, okay.
Sophia. She's an amazing student, and her whole story is very inspiring, so.
Okay, she was, so, all right. Nothing else, we're gonna go on to public commentary. And before I call people up, this is an opportunity for the board to listen to what members of the public have to say. If anybody wants to speak, please fill out a yellow card and give it to our clerk. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. And the content of that 3 minutes cannot be discussion of individuals, whether employees or students or anybody else. So, please keep that in mind, and our district clerk is our timekeeper, so if you hear the bell go off, finish the sentence, and that would be the end of the time. We're taking comments now for agenda items. Non-agenda items are generally held later in the agenda, and neither the board nor the superintendent will generally entertain any, certainly will not entertain comments related to personnel matters or individual students, and these matters are protected by law. So if you have an issue with regard to that, please contact the superintendent of schools. So the total time available is 30 minutes. So I think I've got 10 cards here. So please be respectful of your time so that you don't eat into anybody else who wanted to speak. First speaker, Michael Caramate.
Hey everyone. All right, try to keep this within the time limit. So I understand the current financial difficulty that the district is going through, but I'm here to respectfully oppose the proposed reduction in the private school transportation from 25 miles to 15 miles. Some background on myself and my family. We've lived in this district since 2011. Both my wife and I went to public school. We spent most of our lives on Long Island. My mother taught in this district here for 20 years. And I'm a board member of this South Country Education Foundation. So none of this is here to come in and be negative about what the district is facing. This is just here to kind of state the case of what's going on. So our children attend a private Catholic school. That was our choice to do so, and in coming into the district, the fact that the busing was available certainly was something that we felt influenced our decision to move here. We were looking at the presentation that was made about the proposed cut for the transportation, And one thing that I felt was a little bit frustrating was it was presented as $897,000 in annual savings, when the real amount is $404,000 because of the aid that's lost due to the reduction in busing. And that number was stated several times without bringing up the fact that it's actually 404,000 multiple times. So I just wanted to state that I would urge the board to be a little bit more transparent about that, because I feel like that's, I don't know, that just didn't feel right, that was how it was being presented. It says that only 121 students lose the busing, but that's the majority. It's a majority of the students that are losing the busing. It's 63% of the students that require private school busing. I think that removing the busing as an option is unfair for middle-income families, where the busing is a key factor that allows them to exercise their choice in school that they want to send their kids to. Because there really aren't that many schools that fall within that 15-mile radius. And certainly that applies to us with our daughter going to St. Anthony's next year, and our son going to St. Mary's in Islip. This has been a thing that's been supported by the district for decades now. The voters voted to support this, and that's why this 25-mile radius has been in place. And if you look at the overall budget of what this actually cost the district, it's 0.5% of the total budget. So, and it also, you know, I understand that it's being looked at as a way of, you know, potentially reinvesting into the district. I'd like for the board to be a little bit more clear about what that is, since it was a pretty vague statement about where that money was gonna go. That's gonna impact all these families. So,
Thank you.
Thank
I
you for your
heard the
time.
bell. Thank you. John Holding.
Hello, evening.
Hi.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. In an attempt to be in time, I'm just going to read this straight off. So, my kids are two of the students whose transportation could be eliminated. And I'm asking the board tonight not to authorise a referendum because I believe the information presented is currently incomplete. Point one, I don't believe the numbers are entirely clear. The headline savings figure of 897k is gross. And your own footnote confirms net savings after transportation aid loss is only 404,000, which is less than half. Yet page 5 then restates 897 as the savings figure with no qualification, and that's an internal contradiction in your own document. And it's still not clear whether the $371,000 gap is also gross. If it is, the real gap could be as low as 167k. The community should know which numbers are real before any referendum is authorised. Point 2, human impact is unquantified. So as we just heard from my friend back there, the impacted families made housing, schooling, caregiving decisions partly based on current policy. The district knows the dollar figure to the penny, but has shared no analysis at this point of how many families have no viable alternative. For some of us, there is none. That assessment must come first. Point 3, share the alternatives. This presentation evaluated one cost-saving option. As a matter of good governance, I'd suggest showing the community the full menu of budget areas considered and explain why children's transportation was prioritised for cuts. So in closing, I don't believe you can responsibly authorise a referendum on incomplete information. I'm asking the board to table this decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, here.
Next speaker is Bailey Everett.
Hi, thank you. I want to start out by saying that I am a graduate of Belport High School. My children are fourth generation here in the South Country School District. I have 4 children currently attending private schools. I think it is, I'm going to ask you to respectfully reject the private school transportation proposal. The 25-mile rule established in 1990s has been a long-standing and reliable practice for families within the district. Changing this standard abruptly now feels arbitrary and disrupts expectations that families have planned around for decades. Transportation requirements in New York State public schools currently obligate districts to provide transportation for students in kindergarten through 8th grade who live more than 2 miles from the school and more than 3 miles for high school students. The district is already operating within these required standards for students attending their home schools. If the district is moving towards strictly following these state minimums, it is important to consider whether that standard will be applied equitably to all students or only those attending private school. Reducing that limit to 15 miles would make all Catholic high schools on Long Island ineligible for transportation, along with most Catholic and elementary and middle schools. A majority of private schools also fall within this range. This change would significantly affect many families and limit educational options that students are currently enrolled in. I understand the importance of fiscal responsibility, however, saving approximately $400,000 while impacting 121 students represents a relatively small budget adjustment with substantial community impact. This change would shift transportation costs to families, could influence enrollment decisions, increasing the number of students within the district and offsetting those savings, and would reduce the district's transportation standards to the legal minimum rather than maintaining the level of service our community has historically supported. Before eliminating a long-standing service that directly affects our students and families, I urge the board to explore operation efficiencies and alternative funding strategies that preserve stability, fairness, and access to all. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is this Tessa Gould?
Good evening, and thank you for your time and transparency around this process. I've reviewed the transportation analysis, and I understand the goal of aligning the state minimums and managing costs responsibly. But I want to reframe this decision in terms of both proportional impact and underlying assumptions. The proposal generates approximately $400,000 in net savings with an $11.6 million transportation budget, while directly impacting over 120 students and their families. So this is not just a cost-saving issue, it's a trade-off, and one where a relatively modest savings creates a significant amount of disruption for a specific group of families. But more importantly, I would encourage the board to pressure test a key assumption and model that affected families will simply absorb this change without altering their behaviour. That may not hold. If even a portion of these students transition into district schools, the financial impact could quickly outweigh the projected savings. As I understand, the estimated cost to educate a child in this, or a student in this district, is roughly $39,000 a year. It doesn't take all 121 students changing behaviour for this math to break. It only takes a handful. Just 10 to 15 students returning to district schools would offset the entire projected savings. And beyond that, some families may choose to relocate to maintain access to their schools, which introduces an even bigger risk of losing taxpayers from the district altogether. Neither of these dynamics appear to have been reflected in the current analysis. So before moving forward, I would strongly encourage the board to ensure that the financial model accounts for real-world behaviour, not just static assumptions. I would also encourage the consideration of more balanced alternatives, such as a centralised hub system within 15 miles, or grandfathering in current families to avoid mainstream disruption. Both approaches move toward cost savings while preserving continuity and access. Ultimately, this is about making sure we are optimising the right things, not just reducing costs on paper, but making decisions that hold up in practice. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker is Catherine Stark.
Yeah, I think all my points have been made already. I oppose the cut of the transportation too, but let's move on, and I would just repeat points.
Well, thank you for your comment. Thank you.
We'll still note that you participated.
Tracy Holding.
Good evening, my name is Tracy Holding. I'm a resident of the South Country School District. My children Bailey Holding, who is 9, and my son Hudson Holding, who's 7, both attended Kramer Street Elementary School through 1st grade. We made the difficult financial decision to remove them and enroll them in private school after experiencing declining educational standards due to significant cuts in resources and lack of support in fundamental areas, conditions that coincided with a serious financial crisis within the district. This was not a choice we made lightly, Like other families in this district, we continue to pay full school taxes. However, unlike many others, we draw no direct educational services in return. The only tangible benefit my family receives from the district is transportation. My husband and I are both working parents who commute into the city 4 days a week in order to earn a salary that enables us to pay for private education on top of the significant taxes we already pay. Because of that schedule, I do not have the ability to transport my children to and from school every day. I rely entirely on the bus service the district provides. Removing transportation creates a significant financial and logistical hardship and effectively punishes families who made difficult choices to ensure their children receive the educational standards all children deserve, standards they were unable to access within the South Country School District. I respectfully ask the board to consider the incremental financial burden being placed on this group of families who are already carrying significant costs as a result of the district's current financial crisis. Fiscal responsibility is important, but fairness and trust matter too. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next is John Crossley.
John Crossley, live in Bellport. I moved here from Brooklyn about 2 years ago. My son was in public school in Brooklyn. We spent the pandemic in Brooklyn. My son got a note from one of his fellow students with a drawing of a gun threatening to kill him. So we decided to make a change. We came here when we were speaking to the real estate agent. He was like, you should come to Bellport. It's great. South Country School District, you can choose any school you want because of the busing. And I was like, this is great. We have so many options. We are going to find a place for him where he is happy, where he looks forward to going to school. He's not going to come home from school every day upset because that's what was happening when we were in Brooklyn. So to what everybody else said, like that was such a big selling point when our real estate agent was taking us around. And we are so happy here and he is thriving here. We might not have chosen to move here. We might have gone a little bit further out east if we didn't have that option. Now, I don't know fiscally if it's better to have people enrolled in the district because of what some people said, declining enrollment, but for us, we're paying our taxes into the school district. We're not utilizing any benefit. We are so happy that we moved here. We love it here. But had we not had that option, we might not have moved here if we were only had one school district option, because like everybody else said, that would be the case. Where my son goes is 22 miles from where we live, so we would not be eligible. We would have to figure that out. My wife and I both work. We would have to figure out how to get him to school in the morning and how to get, home. I've had to pick him up. It's, 40 minutes, 45 minutes with traffic, both way, each way. And having the buses is a tremendous help for us and allows us to live here in the district. So I just to repeat what everybody else said, that's personally where we're coming from. So I asked you to consider that and the families affected when deciding on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lance Sneed.
Hi, Lance from Bellport. I went to Bellport Kramer through high school, so did my brother and sister. It served us very well. I'm a professor at Stony Brook. My sister's a principal at Rocky Point Middle School. My brother's a lawyer. We don't like to talk about that. I was very, very happy when my kids could go to Kramer, walk from home to Kramer the same way I did when I lived in Beasley. After about 2 years in consultation with the principal and his teachers, we decided it wasn't a good fit for him for various reasons. I also talked with my sister a lot about this, and we all came to the determination that he really needed to move, and then his brother behind him. So we went to a private school where he's flourishing. I bring all that background up because I don't think it's unreasonable to pull a kid from school if they can find better education and you can accommodate it. I agree with most of what's been said here. I was going to talk about some of it, but I'm just going to go to one point. This 2 to 15 mile decision is kind of an arbitrary decision that's been handed down by Albany. I don't know how they came up with it, but clearly they were saying, well, there's got to be a slot. It doesn't make sense if you're in Albany or Brooklyn that you have the same to do to 15 miles. If there's some sort of reasonableness that has to be attached to this. And I would suggest, as was pointed out, if you've got most of your students more than 15 miles away doing your busing, there's a reason for that. And the reason we found for that is we did not find a good fit for our children within 15 miles. They happen to be 16 miles away. The effect of this, if it goes through, will be my wife will have to give up her job to drive, or we're gonna have to find another school, which I don't have a solution for right now. So again, I would just ask, is it reasonable to stay at 25 as it's historically been, 15? What is it for this area, okay? It can't be the same in Buffalo as it is in the Bronx. We don't have very many quality schools within 15 miles. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Farage?
Yeah, thank you. Hello, thanks so much. I don't want to repeat a lot of the points that people have made, but I will just say this on the back of it. When this happened, we're now looking at another school district, which we don't want to do. And also, I would love to send my kids to local school, but it's not a good fit for them, and it just doesn't work. So I think as a taxpayer, I should have that choice. And I'm just going to start with what I was going to say. So, obviously we've covered the 404,000, it's not 897, and I feel a lot of us feel that that's a misrepresentation, and I think really you should be careful with that, or the people that are presenting it should be careful, because there's probably going to be implications to that later if that is something that is used. And in the context of that 11.6 million and the district-wide fiscal recovery plan, this is a really small saving. With a disproportionately large impact on families in the community. And more importantly, these 121 students represent something rarely acknowledged. Their families pay full school fees, while the district does not bear the cost of educating their children. If even a portion of these students do come back, as was discussed, it's going to be a lot more than $404,000. So this proposal creates real consequences. It shifts the burden onto working families, who rely on safe, reliable transportation in order to make the right choice for their kids. It creates inequality, where only families with flexible schedules and the financial means can attend a school that fits their needs, and their kids' needs. It increases traffic, a lot of traffic, and safety risks for children travelling long distances, and it undermines the trust among taxpayers who contribute to the district while exercising an educational choice, which should be all right. The district has already demonstrated that efficiency measures work. Route optimization and staffing adjustments saved approximately $350,000 without reducing services. So that's the kind of solution that protects both fiscal stability and community trust. The decision is not simply about aligning with the state minimum. It's about whether we balance our budget by removing access for a small group of families who are already contributing more than their share, or more than they take. A net savings of roughly $404,000 can't really be worth the long-term financial risk, safety concerns, and erosion of community goodwill this policy would create. So I would respectfully urge you to reject this proposal. Thank you very much.
Here, here.
Thank you. Is this Penny or Perry Goldsmith?
Perry.
Perry, thank you.
Good evening. I'm not here to talk about the transportation budget. My name is Perry Goldsmith. My daughter is in kindergarten in the dual language program at Brookhaven Elementary. She's my first child in this district. For anyone unfamiliar, the dual language program splits the day evenly between Spanish and English. Nearly half the students are native Spanish speakers, the others half English speakers, and every child is learning all subjects in 2 languages. This is not a standard kindergarten classroom. It's more intensive, more complex, and requires more support, not less. Yet this year, that support has been cut for kindergarten and many other grades. Of major concern is the removal of full-time teaching assistants. Challenges specific to the dual language class without assistance include students with behavioral needs that can't be separated, emotional needs that can't be individually addressed. Teachers lose instructional time transferring students between each classroom, a job that was previously assigned to teaching assistants, not to mention concerns of safety. Other kindergarten classrooms have 18 or 19 students, while this more demanding program has 24. 2 years ago, the district deemed 24 students in a class unsafe and therefore assigned a full-time teaching assistant to the dual language class. This year, that same class has only about 40 minutes of TA support per day, and even that time is reduced when the assistant is needed for bus dismissal or somewhere else in the building. Teaching assistants were distributed equally across schools, not equitably, and Brookhaven is the largest elementary school in the district. What's most troubling is that not a single decision maker who approved the removal of full-time teaching assistants has come to observe how a dual language classroom actually functions day to day. State law is moving towards capping kindergarten to third grade class sizes to 20 students. In New York City, these caps have already been implemented. In 3 years, these conditions may not even be legal. I want to mention that the phrase, "Together we are united in our mission to provide our students with the best possible learning experience," is on the South Country School District homepage. You cannot claim to provide the best possible learning experience while stripping teachers of the support they need to do their jobs and stripping students of the basic tools and instruments required to learn. Just today, we got a notice that the elementary schools are implementing printing restrictions that will impact in-class worksheets and homework. Shall I begin to list the numerous ways the fundamental skills of handwriting is beneficial for learning and development? The board and prior leadership made a series of decisions that have left the district in significant financial distress, resulting in a diminished learning environment and a compromised educational experience for our students. Those responsible for these decisions must be held accountable. I'm asking you to acknowledge that these choices are failing our youngest learners and to find solutions that restore fiscal stability without sacrificing the well-being and education of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that completes all the public speakers.
Thank you.
Before you all leave, thank you for being so respectful in your presentations. I wanted to make this comment just as an observation, if the board gives me just a minute. Sometimes the board meetings get contentious to the point where it's been spoofed, but the ability to speak and articulate your concerns in the manner you did certainly gives us pause to reflect. So I just want to appreciate your approach. Thank you.
Gotta get those kids to bed now.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're next up is items for discussion and action. Is the budget presentation?
Yes.
Thank you. I think maybe I should have went first. Thank you, and once again, I'd just like to echo the superintendent's comments, those of you that came out. This is a very difficult process that the district is going through, and as we indicated in the very beginning of the process, when we look at these type of fiscal situations, we look at everything, and we talk about everything. It doesn't mean that they're going to end up as they're a done deal, but it's very important that we hear the feedback from the community as well. So having said that, I'd like to start out just by chatting a little bit and thanking the administration and all of our colleagues for their efforts in working with us in developing a draft 26-27 budget. What the board is going to see tonight is something a little different than what you have seen in the past this early in the budget process. Because of the fiscal situation that the district is in, we wanted to present a framework and a budget that's a draft document, a complete draft document so the board knows where they are is as far as the spending plan, what reductions have been made so far, and then also a projected revenue side, and we have some estimates as to the tax rate as well. Okay, not the first one? No. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about is what we've been doing over the last couple of months. And this is really, really important because it brings the district forward from where we were as far as enhancing the budget process, installing and implementing controls and oversight and the monitoring. And we've come a long way during the budget process in accomplishing these goals. One of the things that we have done, when you look at the detail in the budget document, we've actually disaggregated codes, we created new codes that's easily identifiable for, I want to say, contract items that are embedded that you might not necessarily pick up or budget correctly. So we flushed those particular things out. We implemented controls in the business office to enhance that process. And that's one of the things that I have to really thank the business office staff as well, is for putting up with me and all my controls and conversations with them. The other thing is that we concerted effort to reduce cost. That happened from day one. We are looking at everything. We are looking at every budget code. We are looking at not only the budget side, but we're looking at the revenue side. And we have made headway in making and reducing costs without directly impacting the core instructional programs. And I think that's something that really, really needs to continue. Implementation of mid-year reductions. We saw that we made some inroads this year to reduce the 25-26 budget. That's going to help us as we step off into the following year as well. The thing that I'm very, very proud of and I guess humbled by is the outreach to our strategic partners, individual firms, professional firms that work with us that have indicated that they would hold their fees and their rates for next year. Some of them are deferring their billing instead of this year to next year. The support has been overwhelming from our strategic business partners, and I think that that has to be noted. The opportunities to enhance revenues. That's one of the things we've done. We talked about filing final cost reports and getting building aid in a more timely basis. We talked about analyzing all our revenues and making sure that we have coming in what needs to come in to support the budget. And more importantly, this is going to be the culmination of a process for a 3-year recovery plan, okay? And coordinating with the special act legislation that the superintendent talked about is going to give us a pathway to fix this. And for those of you that you've probably heard this before, but sometimes it gets old, but the reality is where we ended up in the 24-25 year, we overexpended the legal adjusted budget by $3.5 million. We had an operating deficit of $16.2 million. That is not something that could be corrected overnight. It's not something that could be corrected in 1 year. This is a multi-year plan that the district's gonna need a little bit of a runway to start to right the ship. And we started doing that in 25-26 with the mid-year cuts. We're continuing with that into 26-27 in the budget development piece. So this is really the 10,000-foot view, if you will, of the draft budget for the board. And instead of looking at individual snippets, if you will, this gives you really a complete picture by some categories and where the cost drivers are within our draft budget. So this is broken down, as you can see, by salaries and fringe benefits and debt service, contractual expenses. When we talk about contractual expenses, I don't mean union contracts. These are our .4 object codes within our budget. It's a New York State thing. We have our BOCES cost. We have our supplies, our textbook transportation, and then our transfer to capital. So starting out with salaries and fringe benefits, if you look at the numbers up there, our salary and fringe benefits make up 66% of our total budget. So we are a service-oriented agency. We're a people agency. So most of our costs are in staffing and in fringe benefits. You can see that proposed for the 26-27 year, we're recommending at this particular point, again, it's a draft budget. We're starting the process from here. We have identified and reduced almost $2.4 million in salaries. And as, again, once the superintendent indicated, we will do a complete presentation on the salaries and what has been reduced. Suffice to say that we have, I think, 16 teacher retirees. A lot of those positions are not going to be filled through attrition. So we look very closely at how we are affecting people, how we are affecting lives, if you will. But there will be also some positions that we have to possibly access, okay? And that's just part of the natural process when you have declining enrollment within a school system. Now you can see the fringe benefits line, it's a $2.5 million increase. And we have a little slide where we're able to drill down and see where those cost drivers are a little bit later. But for now, we can see that the increasing fringe benefit costs are far or canceling out the savings that we're achieving in salaries. Debt service, we have an increase in our debt service of about $1.9 million. That's a combination of two things. The one is the new debt service for the energy performance contract that's coming on the books for 26-27. Plus, we have some debt service in there for the special act legislation and what some potential borrowing may cost us down the road. Contractual expenses, we'll be going through that at a later meeting. That's about a $1.3 million increase. BOCES is almost $1 million increase. Now you can see what the district spends overall in BOCES, $14.5 million. That's a lot of services. One thing that the district has to do is go back and evaluate those particular services as well. Supplies, we reduced supplies from the get-go. When we first came this year, we cut off spending early. We cut off spending in November. That doesn't mean that people did not get the necessary supplies that they needed. It just means that we cut back, and going forward in 26-27, we cut the supply budgets by 20%, okay? And once again, I just would like to emphasize, this was not done in a vacuum. It was done with conversation. It was done with looking at multi-year expenditure trends, seeing what was spent, what wasn't spent, what people may have as inventory in their buildings, how much do they really need, what do they really need. So it was a whole process that went into this. It wasn't just an arbitrary decision, let's cut supplies 20%. It's a whole backdrop on that. Textbook and workbooks, that's another area that we looked at very closely. It seems that we were in very good shape for textbooks, and we could kind of scale back next year. And the next item is transportation. Transportation, our projected cost next year is $13.1 million, $1.5 million increase over the current year. That's a very large area, component of the district, if you will. And again, we'll see more details on that at a later slide. And the cafeteria fund transfers and special aided funds, those are straightforward, as well as the equipment. So what this framework presents to you now is a picture of what our costs would be in these particular categories, which equals $152.5 million, which is a $5.3 million increase, or a 3.64 spending increase. So that's the start of the discussion. This next piece is really a continuation from the previous slide. You see where we end off on the bottom, total general fund budget? One of the things that we were talking about to the board is if we had the possibility to put a referendum to the community to reduce the mileage, what would be the cost impact? We know the cost is about $900,000. We know that if the proposition would pass, it would bring our budget down to about 151.6 and our spending to about 3.3%. I did want to clarify some misinformation that I heard this evening. People say that we weren't transparent or maybe not as transparent. And if you go to the district's website, I think it's the second presentation that we did, there is a slide on there and there is a footnote on the bottom that talks about state aid. And for people that are here and that have heard that, that discussion came up in a budget advisory committee meeting that we had. And we talked about the cost, and we talked about some of our costs generates aid, is expenditure-driven aids. So with that, when you look at a school budget and you look at the spending side or the expenditure side, that's the side that we're looking at. When we see an expenditure of $900,000 and we see that we're reducing $900,000, we're not netting that figure against the aid, okay? The revenue budget is a completely different box. You have the expenditures and you have the revenue box. And they act actually independently. And the way state aid works, for those that might want to know, is that you spend the money first, and then you get the aid in the subsequent year, okay? It doesn't come in the same year, it doesn't offset your costs, it doesn't provide you in, if this was to happen, it doesn't provide you in the 26, 27 year with a net cost. What it does, it reduces your cost $900,000, and the following year, your transportation aid will go down by about 400 some odd thousand, because the transportation aid ratio is about 56%. So hopefully that clarifies that. Okay. So the other thing that I just mentioned is that we have two boxes. We have the expenditure box, now we have the revenue side. And this is the revenue side that funds what the total budget is. And at the end of the day, your total revenues have to equal your total expenditures. That's just the way, very simply, how a school district works. So when you look at the top of the revenue sheet, we start out with state aid. There's not a pointer on this, right?
No, I checked.
Yeah,
I can point for you.
I mean, no, I don't want to press anything. So we start out with state aid, and state aid, it's a given number. When we get our state aid runs, the one thing we have to do is, if you look at the district's aid run, is what's called UPK aid in there, it's pre-K. We have to back that out, because that's not considered a general fund aid. That gets accounted for in a different fund. So with that, we also took the liberty in pumping up our foundation aid a little bit by about 1%. We got 1% in the original state budget. We anticipate that maybe we'll get another 1%. So we actually were very aggressive on the revenue side in coming up with this budget. The next large item is our pilot payments. That's a given, that's a schedule of construction projects, if you will, or properties that are not on the tax rolls yet, but we do receive payments directly from the particular participants. And our other income, that's straightforward. You see the categories. It brings us down to our total state aid and other income numbers. So completing that thought is the next part is the pieces that we call other financing methods, okay? This is money from your reserves, I like to say savings accounts. People can relate to it that way. And you can see that for 26-27, we're projecting about $2.8 $2.6 million in using from our reserves. Now, one thing that I want to share with the board, that we made a conscious decision, and we also reviewed with the controller's office, is at budget time last year, there was a certain amount of dollars that were indicated that they wanted to use from reserves to fund the current year 25-26 budget. Because of the diminishing returns of our restricted reserves, we made a conscious decision to say, we're not gonna use 100% of those funds in ERS and TRS, we're only gonna use 50% for this current year. And the rationale being is very simple. We don't wanna leave the district broke, okay? We have a hard enough time navigating where we are, so what we wanna do is we wanna leave some of those revenues, as you can see, so that it could help us a little bit in the 26-27 school year. So that's the difference. You see a new line on there, Special Act legislation, deficit band borrowing, okay? This is not considered revenue. This is considered other financing source, okay? And in order to get to the $152 million budget and back into a tax levy of $76 million to bring us to the cap, 6.51%, okay? We end up having to borrow almost $7 million. So what this budget tells us right now, looking at it, we put together a budget and we know this budget's gonna have a $7 million hole in it. Keep in mind what we talked about earlier. It's a multi-year recovery plan. We started this year, we're gonna continue 26, 27, and for the next 2 years, we're gonna continue on the same path. The thing that I have to repeat, and I repeat over and over again, just by borrowing does not resolve the structural deficit. The district has to continue reducing costs, okay? That 6.9 million eventually has to go away. It has to be wiped out, okay? And interestingly enough, when you think about it, if that 2.6 million above that 6.9 was not available, guess what? We would have a bigger hole. We would have no money to use, okay? So we are going through some significant fiscal challenges. We are doing our best to look, as I say, around the fringes, look around for the low-hanging fruit, things that don't directly impact the core instructional program, okay? But when you think about what was just put together and presented, it basically provides a blueprint that says that we could have a 2026-27 budget of $152 million, which is a 3.64% spending increase. We can say with confidence, it's at the cap, it's at the tax cap percentage. We're not under, we're not over, we're at the cap. And this is what the result would be. So having said that, long-winded a little bit, but I think nonetheless important in explaining those particular pieces, understanding the Special Act legislation. And again, we keep repeating this in different ways. I hope people really understand it, that to borrow deficit bonds allows us to legally balance the budget. It allows us to legally fill those holes and balance the budget, okay? Because we cannot finish this year in another deficit situation. You cannot overexpend another voter-approved budget. So that has to happen, okay? And it's important to note that whatever funds you borrow, they have to be repaid in future budgets, okay? And do not replace the need for ongoing expenditure reductions. We list the legal framework there. I don't need to go through all the details. but basically it says the same thing that we've been saying, that it legally balances the budget. It appears on the revenue on the finance side, but it's not recognized as revenue. It's other financing sources, okay? Very important. Now getting into some of the meat and potatoes, some of the high-cost areas. As you can see, our total transportation budget is $13.1 million. It's a $1.5 million increase. As you know, South Country contracts all of its bus services. Last April, I believe, the district received a 5-year bid, and Town Bus was awarded that bid. Going forward to 26-27, those bid prices are up at around 5%. So we're seeing a 5% rise in our contract transportation costs. As we mentioned previously, and was mentioned here tonight by one of the community members, I appreciate that they're actually reading some of the presentations, that we had some mid-year cuts. We did some bus routing efficiency, and we were able to trim about $350,000 from the budget without affecting the transportation for kids. And that's just some of the things that we do when I refer to low-hanging fruit and ways to save money without cutting into the core program. Implementing and enhancing the budget strategies and control to ensure that the transportation budget aligns with the contractual utilization. The budget controls and the things that we started out with this conversation, extremely, extremely important. Why? Because they were lacking previously, okay? We talked about bringing credibility to the budget document. I can say with great certainty that the document that has been presented, 26, or is being presented, 26-27, is a credible budget document. And what I mean by that, it represents your current program cost. It represents the anticipated additions. It represents projections for anticipated cost increases. It's a reflection of where the district is, okay, versus the current year budget, which maybe that $11.6 million transportation number should have been a little higher at budget time, okay? So when we talk about credibility to the budget document, this happens throughout the entire document. And we're talking about, 1,000 codes, budget codes, if you will, and each code means something. So having said that, I also mentioned here that the transportation aid ratio is 56.7%. And once again, transportation aid, as with any expenditure-driven aid, always comes in the subsequent year. Doesn't come in the same year. So just seeing our utilization for transportation, so people can get a full depth and breadth of what we offer as far as the number of buses. So we transport just under 3,100 students, and that's without athletics or field trips. Just our contractual transportation during the regular school year and during the summer, it's about 3,100 kids. You can see from this matrix and the summaries on the far right, we have about 94 buses and 46 matrons. And during the summer, we run about 33 buses and 39 matrons. So when you think of what makes up that $13.1 million, it's right here. This is what we do. And this is the transportation cost of the program. Another expenditure cost driver in the budget is fringe benefits. We talked about that salary and fringe benefits encompass 66% of the overall budget. When we look at these particular benefits, we can see the increases and decreases. State retirement, which is the first line, that's ERS. We know the rate has gone up 17.6%. It's a 1.1% increase from the prior year. You can see that for TRS, we're happy to report that the rate is down 1.35% to 8.24. So we're seeing a very significant reduction in TRS, and that has to do with a lot of those teachers that are being reduced within the budget through attrition and through retirement. So there's a savings that the district achieves there. Also, Social Security, this is a savings as a result of reducing staff. Workers' comp, we're seeing an increase, but again, we do have a workers' comp reserve, and these monies are normally paid from the workers' comp reserve. Okay, again, the reserve is the funding comes through your savings account. So anytime you see that something is funded from a reserve, it has no impact on the tax rate. Okay? So I think that that's a very important concept. So even though we're showing an expenditure side of X number of dollars, we know that those X number of dollars are being funded from a reserve. It's not impacting the tax levy. It's that other source of revenue on the revenue sheets. Unemployment, we anticipate an uptick just because of what we're doing and what's happening. Unemployment, again, has gotten very expensive. The rate has gone up to $829 a week for 26 weeks. And again, suffice to say, we do have an unemployment reserve. So any monies that we spend here get funded from the reserves, do not impact the tax rate. Disability insurance, that's a small savings. The next category, health insurance, that's a very, very large cost driver. We can see that overall, our health insurance and medical costs are up about $3 million, okay? The district went through a rate hike last year twice. They had a mid-year increase as well as an increase in the beginning of the school year. The plan has a 12% increase going into the next school year, 26-27, and that's reflected in these costs. You'll see that we have Medicare reimbursements. Districts are responsible for reimbursing retirees their Medicare Part A, and we do that. And also we have an insurance opt-out provision, which is increasing by about $360,000. Now, when we see the opt-out, even though this is increasing, it still generates a savings for the district, because individuals that opt out for the health insurance, the district doesn't have to pay the full boat of the cost for the health insurance. If the individual gets reimbursed, is either 40% of the cost of an individual plan or a family plan. So if a family plan right now is upwards of close to $39,000 to $40,000, 40% of that is a significant savings for the district. So opting out is not the worst thing in the world, but it still does add cost to our health insurance. Dental is a minor increase, and the terminal leave pay and buyouts, that has to do with incentives. We did with the assistance of the BTA, and we thank them. We came up with an MOA where we were able to make the incentive fundable from the district's reserves and not impact the general fund as greatly as it has in the past. So that was a big benefit. Once again, this is another category that benefits the district because we do have these reserve funds. So your total benefit costs are projected at $37.7 million. It's about a 7.27% spending increase, and we watch the benefit costs very closely as we go forward. And the final cost driver I just want to talk about a little bit is debt service. The reason why I wanted to talk about debt service because it goes hand in hand with the Special Act legislation, how it's going to work, and how we envision borrowing going forward into 2026-27. So the first two lines, you got your school bond principal and interest. That's your normal serial bonds. The next two lines, you'll see you have EPC, and that's your energy performance contract. That's where I mentioned that 26-27, We have new debt service for the first time, okay? And that's put in the budget appropriately. And by the way, when those projects get complete, we will also be getting building aid on those projects. And the building aid is upwards around 70-some-odd%. In addition to the building aid and the cost, we also get rebates from the project that is underway. So we anticipate over $500,000 in rebates back from the energy companies for embarking on this project as well. So at the end of the day, an energy performance contract should be what we call revenue neutral. It should not cost the taxpayers because of the additional state aid, because of the rebates, and because of the decrease in energy consumption. The savings should equal the debt service and the payout once the project gets going. So an energy performance contract is something that's beneficial for a district to have, and certainly we're probably, I want to say, halfway through the current project as it stands. The last two items, the one that's highlighted is the Special Act Deficit BAN, which is Bond Anticipation Note Borrowing. When we talk about Special Act legislation, we talk about deficit borrowing. And what we will anticipate, we have authority, we're looking for authority to borrow up to $12 million. Okay, it doesn't mean that we're going to necessarily go out and borrow the $12 million, but what that $630,000 represents is the interest cost on that ban, and only the interest cost. We didn't budget any principal, because in the following year, this year, we anticipate taking out a bond anticipation note. Next year, we're gonna have to renew it and roll it forward, okay? So we already have the financing mechanism in place. Think about when we go back to that revenue sheet, and I'll slide back because I wanted to point that out again. It's this slide here. That Special Act legislation for that deficit borrowing. Again, that's the $6.7 million hole $6.9 million hole that we need to fill. And the debt service is where we're gonna be paying for the interest on that. So hopefully that's clear as mud. Okay, so that's the debt service. So basically, again, just to recap, you have a plan in front of you that gives you a full picture of what a draft budget would look like at $152.5 million. We know the spending increase, 3.64. We know the tax cap levy increase is 6.51% because we're at the cap, okay? And we also know that if the proposition goes through, that would be the differential in what the budget and the proposed tax levy would be. So with that, I know it's a different format. Hopefully you found it helpful, not helpful. I think it presents a much bigger, clearer picture of the budget as a whole. And I welcome comments or discussion.
The first guy.
Even before tonight,
Yeah.
I was struggling with how this transportation referendum was helpful to the school district. And I see the numbers, and when you do your last slide, I see what's there. But we have a proposed budget that's right at the tax cap that is providing all the services that we need for our students to continue. And at the tax cap, it includes the transportation for miles beyond 15 miles away, from 15 to 25 miles, correct?
That is correct.
So if there's the referendum, the money for the district, we're not getting more money for the district. What it is, I'm gonna use air quotes, a savings of $900,000 in the budget so that the amount of taxes levied is 900,000 less than if we went to the full tax cap, including all the transportation. Did I get that right? It sounded
Correct.
muddled
It-
to me as I said
Right,
it.
it would bring us down to that particular point. So I think some of the strategies and the questions for the board going forward is, where would the board be comfortable? Are you comfortable at the tax cap at 6.51%? Is there any interest or appetite to exceed the cap? Is there any interest to lower the cap? And I think the one constant that we all need to keep in mind is that we still need to make the budget reductions. We're not there yet, and I just by the financing piece, we're financing the deficit. You have to continually, in the forefront of your mind, we must continue to reduce our costs, because our costs are here and our available revenues are here. And you have little or no reserves to make up that difference. So you need to bring those two into play. They need to get, so it's something that for the next, even going into 26, 27, if this is the budget, the district doesn't stop looking for savings. The district doesn't look for ways to cut back. I mean, we have to still, we talked about our BOCES costs, over $14 million. There are literally hundreds of BOCES services that we have to assess and say, okay, are there some that maybe we don't need? Are there some that we're paying for and maybe not utilizing the service? So when we talk about efficiencies, those are the type of things that we're really peeling back and we're diving into in the budget. But we can't lose sight of the fact that this is really the stepping stone, and we still have to cut back our costs.
And I appreciate what you said, but I still have not had those dots connected for me
Okay.
about how that benefits the cost reductions that we need to be doing. I don't
Because
see,
it's,
I'm just not seeing it.
okay, it's 900, first of all, it's $900,000 less you're reducing your cost. So the budget is being reduced by 900,000. And the following year, for full disclosure, about aid is that the transportation aid in the 2027, 28 budget will be adjusted accordingly. And unfortunately, it's not a one for one, if you will, because what happens is, think about what I talked about, transportation aid. And transportation aid it's an expenditure-driven aid, okay? And if we look at that transportation line, we have projected 13.1 million, our current budget is 11.6. So we know that if we go in to this year, that we're spending a heck of a lot more in 25, 26 than 11.6 million. And I can tell you that because I know that's one of the categories that we have a budget deficiency in this year. So we're gonna spend more. When you spend more, you're gonna get more aid, okay, the subsequent year. So is that 400 some odd thousand for private school going to be a direct deduct from transportation aid? Absolutely not. Because when you look at our proposed costs, 13.1 million, our costs are going up considerably. And we're getting a huge bump as far as transportation aid. So there's gonna be pluses and minuses. You know, you can't just take one category in the budget and say, okay, I'm gonna spend $10 and we're gonna get back 5 and, okay, the net amount is 5. That's not how we present a voter-approved budget. You have to look at the expenditure side, you talk about the expenditure-driven aids. If you're making reductions, like we are doing, we have to be very cognizant not to only look at expenditure-driven aids. Why? Because textbook workbooks, it has their own aid categories. BOCES, it has its own aid categories. We get BOCES aid. But the fallacy with BOCES, We don't even get BOCES aid back in the subsequent year. We get only 55% of BOCES aid back in the subsequent year. We get 45% in year 3. Okay, that's the way BOCES aid works. A lot of people don't know that, so it's not a direct dollar for dollar, but that's how BOCES, that's how BOCES pay, that's the state, how they pay out BOCES aid. So there's a lot of, I wanna say, getting into the weeds, when you start looking at that. But suffice to say, I think the way that we, presented it and as a package gives a good, maybe bird's eye view. But yes, any reduction in 900,000, because if that reduction doesn't come from there, tomorrow in cabinet, I'm gonna look at Jason, I'm gonna look at Tony, and I'm gonna say, guys, where else are we taking the 900,000 from?
Attempt to, before, really quick, I just want to see if I can attempt to connect the dots. So basically, one of the challenges we have is how do we reduce expenditures? And I think what John was trying to articulate is if we remove the, and there's a lot of compelling arguments against, sort of going in that direction, but if we remove or change the radius miles that we provide transportation for, and there's a savings of $900,000, that doesn't mean that we have all of a sudden $900,000 to spend on something else.
Right.
I don't know if I articulated that correctly. In other words, that's just representative of a reduction, because as part of your presentation, it seems that in the proposed budget, and then this is a draft, this is not our final budget. There's still, several weeks away from us getting there, and we're gonna be revisiting this, but this is kind of just where we're starting, and we'll work from there. The idea is, when you looked at the potential borrowing for next year, or the deficit, which was $6.9 million, this essentially will reduce that to $6 million. So it will kind of ease, or sort of close that little gap a little further.
That's right.
And so,
I guess the best way to describe it is, right now, we have a hole that's this big. Next year, we're hoping to make the hole this big. Year 2, we'll make the hole this big, and by year 3, we want to close that hole. So that's really what's happening. You could do it all at once, but the one thing that I did want to talk about, and I'll probably be accused of fear-mongering or something of that nature, but I think it's reality, and I think it's very important for everyone to understand what the options are, okay? Whether the board of the community feels 6.51 is too high, it's too much money, I always ask, what's the alternative, okay? And when we look at that, see that property tax line, okay? 76.1 and then 71.4. We see the difference there is 4.5 million. So this is reality. No discussion, no exemptions, no gerrymandering the numbers back and forth. If this district ends up on contingency budget, we go back right now and we would have to cut 4.6 million from the budget. Now think about what that would look like for your program. Okay? It's a challenge. And again, I throw that out there, not to scare people, but I want people to understand what some of the options are. Because it's always, everyone, there's cause and effect. So there's a reaction to every action. And, that's something to me that I always keep in the back of my mind. For a district to be on contingency budget, I can tell you with certainty, and I'm sure legal counsel can confer with me, that it's probably anywhere from 5 years to recover from it, for a district to recover from a contingency budget.
So,
Yes,
so this is one of the ways that we're considering it, and I'm having, or struggling with the mathematics for the short term. Now, the long-term plan is a 3+ year recovery plan, as obviously we lose debt servicing and we get additional revenues in other places. But please correct me if I'm misstating this. The way we're going about this is we're saying to reduce the transportation radius such that it's gonna reduce by our calculations here, by $900,000. And we're suggesting to do that through a proposition. And the only way for us to do that for a proposition is that we have a budget which goes to the tax cap at 6.51 that includes the 900,000.
That's correct.
Okay, but if I reduce, because of the way we're doing that, which is proposition, the proposition must be approved by the voters. If the proposition is approved by the voters, then the budget is then reduced. And instead of a cap point of 6.51, we go to a lesser tax cap of the 5%, correct?
5.25.
5.25. So, aren't we cutting our nose off to spite our face? Because if I push, and I'm just using this as the scenario, if I suggest or in promoting, because I've sat here and said we need a budget to run the district, there's no issue with that. At 6.51, we go out to the voters and we say, we want that budget. We promote that budget. If they disagree, if they approve that budget, but they give us the cap tax reduction, we're also reducing the cap, so I'm reducing my income, my revenue, by $900,000 for that year. So I'm saving $900,000, no question, in year one. I'm reducing the bus cost. But on the other side, I also reduce my revenue that comes in from the property tax. Am I missing some?
No, that's a good analysis. I think the piece that we have to talk about is that that's an option. As we stated, that's an option. Nothing to say that if the proposition passes and you reduce the budget by $900,000, you can't increase the tax levy by $900 and bring it back to 6.51%.
But if the cap,
Okay.
if the cap.
The cap is 6.51. So basically, if you look at that property tax line and the way, if you remember the tax cap formula, what we did, when I calculated the max of what that 6.51 would be, and that's that $4.8 million. So that's the gap, if you will, that would bring us to the cap, 6.51. So that's the maximum tax levy, that 76.1 million.
That's our cap.
So that's why, so I built this plan as a starting point for discussion. We built there, because it's always nice to come in with a budget and say, okay, we present you a plan that we're at the cap. Now we can talk about further reductions, now we can talk about if you wanna go over, if you wanna go under.
Can I just make a quick point to your point, because, we've been discussing this a lot, obviously. So I think one of the misconceptions is when you look at expenditures and revenue, they have to balance in a budget.
Yes.
But right now, to your point, when you're saying that if we lose that $900,000, we're losing $900,000 in revenue, it's revenue we don't have. Because that revenue is coming from the deficit borrowing.
Correct.
So I don't think it's not like an equivalence, you see what I'm saying?
No, I do, but I guess what I'm saying is that if I'm gonna believe in heart to hearts that it is not only us, when I say us, I mean the board to look at it, but we're asking the community to back a plan for us. And if I'm gonna be practical, I wanna say, I want that 6.51% cap. I'm gonna promote that the idea is we need 6.51% on that cap going forward. That if we're here as a board, this is my personal opinion, right now, I'm not convinced that prop works, because no matter what, I want that 6.51%. I wanna save the 900,000, but I want the 6.51% in there, whether that, because I need that money. If I reduce my revenue, I'm also reducing my ability to have expenses. So I need to find that 900,000 somewhere else. I'm gonna, I'm trying to get that part straight in my head, because long-term, I wanna do the cap to cap to cap for those 3 years, so that my revenue continues to increase, because that was our biggest issue as you came in and explained that to us, that our costs are exceeding our revenue. So while I do wanna reduce costs, I also need to increase our revenue, because at the end of the day, transportation hit us with additional costs. Health insurance, as we all know, no matter what position or job that we're taking, is increasing. So I'm just trying to
Special ed
Yeah,
is,
and special ed, that frame of reference, so I appreciate that, thank you.
Chris Puccini, who's,
Trustee Pacini, do you want to speak?
is ready?
Trustee Pacini?
Yes, I do, thank you. So I have a couple of questions that were not related to Mr. Ross's comments, but now I have some comments related to that. And I apologize, sometimes it's not easy, my reception isn't great here, so if I missed a part of it, please excuse me. But we keep talking about, if I look at this slide here at the end here, so we're saying it's a $900,000 savings, and it lowers, but are you saying that if we pass this referendum, that our levy increase is 5.25 and not 6.51, or that we can, am I understanding that correctly?
no, you have the option, Chris, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you have the option, you could reduce the levy, or you could reduce the cost with the transportation and still raise the levy up to bring the revenue in. That would be an
So we
option
can
for
still
the
be at
board.
6.51% with the second option here and use those funds for however we see fit within the budget.
Okay?
Is that accurate? I'm asking.
Yeah, you have many different options and scenarios that you can consider, but what I'm hearing the board say is that the 6.51 is important to be at the cap, that you want to raise that amount of revenue. And I go back to what I said earlier, still recognize that even if we set the tax levy at 6.51, we still need to subsequently reduce our costs. Whether it's during 26, 27, whether it's into 27, 28, that's just a process that we will be living with for the next couple of years.
And I understand, and I recognize the issues that we're under and the need to reduce costs. However, I think this is penny wise and pound foolish, so I'm gonna ask the president to take item F2 separately, because I'll be voting against this, this resolution, and I understand it, but if we really consider it, and to some of the comments, the net cost is really $404,000, not $900,000, right? Because $900,000 of it, a percentage of it is aidable, right? That's accurate?
Well, I think the net cost is, you don't see the net cost in the same school year. You see the state aid reduction in the subsequent year. And then, as I indicated, because your transportation costs go up, okay, and you're having additional transaid, you probably won't see that much of a deduction in transaid. But nonetheless, it would still come in the subsequent year.
Subsequently results in a $500,000 in additional revenue next year. Is that a fair statement?
In additional revenue or less?
Well, it would be additional, right?
No, because if the state aid is taking back, if the proposition goes through and we reduce our expenses by 900,000, you're getting less building aid on the, less trans aid on the 900,000. So you receive less aid in the subsequent year.
If the resolution didn't go through and or if it wasn't on the ballot,
Okay.
the $900,000 cost expense this year results in additional $500,000 of revenue roughly next year. Is that accurate?
Yes, it will generate trans aid, as it's doing
And
now.
I think that's the conversation we need to have too, because if I look at this budget slide, it really just pit private school families against non-private school families, because everybody's gonna say, well, sure, I want 1.25% less taxes next year. So I struggle with how this is presented. So regardless, I understand it, but $400,000, which would be the net increase, even whether it's this year or next year, is roughly 0.25% of our entire budget. And I understand the need to save funds wherever we can, but this is a community who have been overwhelmingly supportive of our district and our budget for many, many years. And to some comments from some of the people who spoke tonight, they came here for that reason. So they you know, I don't know that this is the best place to save money just yet. So for me, I'd rather see this tabled and looked into a little bit further, but, you know, that's just my opinion. But however, I don't want to spend too much time. I said we talked about it for a while. I had two specific questions, or one question with two specific scenarios. This is the second year in a row, maybe even the third, we are talking about increases within our budget from our busing and healthcare. That's accurate, right? It's at least 2 years in a row?
Yes.
Is there nothing within, so speaking about busing specifically, because I believe they're both separate, because we don't have a contract for healthcare, correct?
We belong to a healthcare consortium, yes.
Right, but we don't approve an annual contract for,
No.
for healthcare. Got it. So, but busing, we're in what, a 5-year contract?
It was a 5-year contract, yes.
And is this contract over, or are we still in the midst
No,
of
you
this
just,
contract? It's like that we extended
the
last
bid
year?
just came in last April. The first year of the contract was effective 26-27 school year. I'm sorry, 25-26.
Is there nothing within our contract that protects us from, you know, increases? Because this is, you know, 13% increase in transportation while we're within a contract. There's nothing that prevents increases at that level.
That's one of the advantages that the district would have in looking at a 5-year contract with a carrier. Number one, it presents continuity. If your board didn't have that in place, you would have to go out every year and bid your transportation, okay? Or they can renew the transportation contract at CPI, at the May 31st CPI. So there are other options. The district chose to award this particular 5-year transportation contract when they awarded the bid last April.
John, just to Chris's point, one of the issues you brought up is that we believe it was under budgeted in the prior budget, so that affects the percentage increase, because I think Chris is bringing out the 13% increase. If it's a 5% increase on the contract, that it's poorly budgeted the year before, hence the 13% differential from year to year.
Correct. We actually have a budget shortfall in the current 25-26 year in transportation. I mean, that's what it is, and we're navigating through that as well.
So what you're saying then, from my understanding, is that this increase of roughly 13% isn't necessarily a contractual increase, it's a budget increase because we didn't budget properly in previous years?
I think it's a combination of two things. Yes.
And also the increased number of buses, is that also a factor?
Yeah, and the increased utilization, the number of buses.
Okay.
The other thing that drives that, if you look at the matrix, we use a tremendous amount of matrons on our buses. And when you see a matron on a bus, that's basically, it's a special ed bus. And the CSC is appointing matrons to ride on the bus with kids.
So, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's just, I guess I want to understand, so then, all things presented equal from year to year, what is the percentage increase? Are you saying that this 13% is driven by two factors, poor budgeting in previous years and additional services in forward coming years?
Yes.
Okay, so, and are you saying that the increases in busing are a direct result of services, contractual or mandated services for specific students?
Yes, that's part of it, yep.
Is that a part of it, or is that, I'm just trying to understand it.
It's just a part of it, Chris. So, for instance, if we have 20 students that go through CSEs, and they're all provided special ed transportation that requires a one-on-one or a matron, we have to provide that service on the bus. So we're increasing our services based on the needs of the student. That's where our utilization increases. The cost increases are there. You know, that might be a flat 5% on the cost of one bus, you know, to 1 year to the other. But then you have, coupled with that, the budgeting deficiencies from this year. So when you look at, when we show this, we're showing budget to budget. We're not showing adjusted budget to the next year's budget. We're showing budget to budget. So you're getting a real look, and that what I talked about earlier, it's a real indicator of what the cost of your program happens to be based on your current level of services.
Got it.
If that answers your question.
Thank you, and I think it's an important distinction specifically for the public to understand that our cost of the contract based on the rate didn't go up 13%, but the services we're using on top of that has what's driven this 13% increase, right?
It's true, combination, yes.
Got it, okay, so
Agreed.
then the next part of it is, healthcare, again, goes up 13% this year. Now, I understand that's on a multi-year contract, but last year we had a mid-year increase. Is there not something that prevents companies, specifically insurance companies, from increasing their rate mid-year on a publicly voted on budget? Like, how are we supposed to manage that and plan for an increase mid-year after our budget is already voted approved?
That's a great question, Chris. The plan that the district belongs to is the Suffolk School Employees Health Plan. And that plan has always been on a fiscal year, July through June. And the reason why that plan is on a fiscal year, because it coincides with the school district's year. Unlike night shift, when night shift runs from January 1st to December 31st, it overlaps the school year. So, and the reason why I'm familiar with that is in my other district, we were part of that plan for a while. So to answer your question, it was in my tenure, I have never seen that plan do a mid-year increase. I don't know the particulars as to what caused that increase last year, but apparently they didn't have sufficient monies to pay claims or whatever the situation was, happened. But they do have the ability to have the board pass a resolution. And the board is made up of administrative representatives and a labor representative. And they take a vote as to whether they support or whether they don't support the increase.
Yeah, I would think that this would be something, a topic that should be brought up to our local legislators and possibly even something that we submit as a legislative priority to NISBA. I mean, I just don't see how a municipality that has an annual budget that's voter approved can accept increases that are exorbitant in the midst of a budget season. So that's all I have on this, but thank you, I appreciate the responses.
Thank you.
Point of
Some
clarification.
good questions.
Very quickly, the way the resolution is written with regard to the transportation is that it mandates a reduction of the budget by $900,000 and therefore the levy. So I just want to make that point clear, that the way this resolution is written, proposed tonight, that if the resolution passes, and should the proposition pass, then the budget subsequently gets reduced by $900,000.
Okay, but going to what Trustee Ross said and what I was trying to say, I think we need to be at the tax cap. So I'm not seeing any benefit of getting us below the tax cap from any of these measures.
Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but it starts to benefit us in years down the road as we reduce the cost that we're obligated to pay. But it's something that's further down the road. That's why I said there's no short-term benefit is the way I'm looking at it. So I understand the need for the reduction costs.
It's Trustee
Yeah.
Felicetta's turn now.
First, I want to say I've been through about 20 of these. This simplified, but the most clear presented presentation of the budget I've ever seen. So,
Thank you.
the one thing I do have a
Don't tell
question.
Dave that.
I'm going with it, but I'll probably not. But if you go to the special act ban and borrowing, that's my biggest question, because I understand what everyone's saying here in regards to the 900,000. We have, that's money that's borrowed money. We're using borrowed money to move forward. So every savings we have is gonna bring down that borrowed money over time. And we have to eliminate that money in a 3-year period, basically is what you're saying. My question is, there's gonna be cuts everywhere in every place, obviously, and there's gonna be more cuts. If it's not 900,000 here, it's gonna be 900,000 there, because we have to evaporate that $7 million by next year. It may be, I don't know if you have projection what we may use, but we only have, 12 million total? So about 5 million in the safe for the next couple of years to balance that budget over a 3 or 4 year period. So if every dollar is not taking down that money, because I think that's what I kind of heard you say was, that could bring it down to only 6 million borrowing, and the following year, less borrowing, and the following year, we're spending money we don't have. Now, we have it in borrowed money, but it's gonna have to be brought back somewhere else. So, I understand, and I had neighbors, I had friends that all spoke tonight, and we have to start being fiscally responsible in the sense that we have to find ways to save money somewhere or another. And maybe this is the right reason, or the wrong spot to do it, but like you said, tomorrow, your conversation would be with John and Tony about where's the next spot? What is the next spot? Is it another teacher? Is it another program? Is it another sport? Is it after-school busing? So I think we have to be realistic when we have these conversations that it's not gonna stop right here. And I feel for the people that this is affecting right now, but there's gonna be so many more people affected. But if we don't do it, their contingency budget, we're talking about massive cuts that we won't recover ever. So I think my point is where you have that $7 million there, we have to evaporate that at some point in 3 years.
100% agree.
And if we don't do that, right now, we have no path forward without some of these cuts. And I think, what is the next step? And I think Ms. Santana said this, what else is there to cut? And it's gonna be more and more, and we have to do that over the spread out period. If we don't start considering some of these cuts, I don't know how we get to that point. And what is the contingency? Is it sports? Is it music? Is it, what else? So respectfully, I respect everybody that made a comment tonight. It has nothing to do with one individual person.
I do too.
It has nothing to do with anybody in any different program, but I heard about the dual language program, the TAs being cut. What's the next option for that? Do we go to no TAs? You know, these are things that we have to have real serious conversations about what is comparably effective. And I know bringing down that number from 7 million or 6.9 over a 3-year period, we have to have some serious conversations. And I'm not saying that this is the right one. I'm saying that there's a conversation worth being had. But I think we're looking at, I think what you said exactly, that 900,000 brings it down to only $6 million in borrowing. So right there, we're $900,000 closer to where we need to be in 3 years. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? So,
Yeah.
I think we just have to be realistic. I think we have to be realistic, yeah.
I mean, could we present the proposition, reduce the transportation, and set the tax levy at the cap?
Yeah.
No, so how it would work is you have the budget, and then the transportation proposition would serve to reduce the overall budget. You don't have the option to both raise the taxes and remove the transportation.
Well, let's go in a different answer. Okay.
So, and, sorry, just one.
Okay, yeah.
All I would say was finish to that would be is, if we don't get that amount down, where else does it come from?
Well, it has to come down.
We don't have an option.
I'm gonna go back to how we started this conversation when I first came aboard. We gotta have a conversation about everything. The problem is that things that, even if it's, as the superintendent indicated, even if it impacts one student, it's an issue for someone. So it's very difficult decisions. We have to look at everything. I applaud the board for having this dialogue. I think we need to have this dialogue. We need to expand this dialogue. We need to bring and work together to come up with other ideas of how we can bring down costs. I mentioned BOCES. You know, again, our focus so far has really been keeping the instructional core program. So when you talk about things like the transportation, okay, you're not affecting the core instructional program, it's on the outside. When you think about what we've done in the teachers that have retired and we don't replace them through attrition, that's a budgetary savings that we're not impacting somebody's life. When you think about the mid-year transportation cuts that we made, where we looked at the bus efficiency routes, and I was able to say, okay, we have 2 matrons on this bus we don't need, we have 1 van we don't need, and we can save $370,000. So, yeah, we're looking at everything, but we're kind of running low on the low-hanging fruit and the stuff around the fringes. And over the next couple of years, we're gonna have to make some real significant decisions.
And I guess what I think I heard you say was pretty relevant to the fact that that 6.9 has to get down, and we have to start chopping it slowly. And unfortunately, there's gonna be a lot of people along the way that are gonna be affected. And it could be every teachers to TAs to programs to everything in between. And we have to slowly get that done. We don't have an option. The alternative is contingency, and contingency means loss of everything. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
So
You have to understand, again, the path that we're going down with the special act legislation. If they're gonna give us authority to borrow, what's gonna happen is gonna be tremendous amount of oversight. The state is not gonna give you oversight to borrow and then let you do whatever you want or not reduce your deficit, or that 1 year you're gonna come in and you're back at an operating deficit, okay? That's not a good recipe for the district. That'll put the district in a whole different, situation. But, so, with that, you have to do it because it becomes, it's necessary at this point. You're running out of revenues. That $2.6 million that we have on the table, that's up there for the 26, that's the other half of some of the reserves that we're using. So we may have some reserves left in unemployment, we may have some reserves left in accrued compensated absences, but TRS will be down. We might have a little in ERS, but you're running out of savings accounts.
Can I just add one comment to that, because it made a good point. I know it's hard to project this, but in your experience, and I'm sure you've already projected somewhat into 27, 28, that 2.684 and the 6.97, your hope is to close that gap tremendously, right?
Big time.
If we don't,
Big time.
is there a number that's like, what is it right now? So we're at like about $10 million, give or take?
Yeah, you're close to
We would
that.
like to cut that probably in half, right?
Easily,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's another 5 that we have to come up with next year. So this is a long-term problem that we have to fix in a short-term period.
So I had 2 other follow-up questions on the same one. Under the debt servicing for the special act legislation, you had commented before that the 630 is interest only.
Correct.
Is that a practical prospect for next year? I mean, if we go out and borrow 6.9, am I getting an interest-only loan with the idea that 6.9 is then paid over the term, or am I paying P&I going forward over that year?
To understand what a deficit bond anticipation note, when you borrow on that, you normally pay back interest only in the subsequent year. You have the option in years down the road, if you go to renew it, you can pay down the principal if you choose. What we're choosing in 26, 27 is the interest-only option. So the way this is gonna work exactly is in the 25, 26 year, we will borrow a bond anticipation note. And that'll look to fill the hole this year, okay? By law, and by GASB 62, but I don't wanna get into the granular stuff, we will have to renew that within 6 months, okay? And provide the borrowing for this school year. And again, the one payment that we're gonna make is that 630. That 630,000 interest represents if we borrowed $12 million.
Okay, that was the second question. The third question that I had that was related to that, and this is a completely foreign entity to me this is the first year looking at it, and that's dealing with or addressing TANs. Now, we borrow TANs money at the beginning of a academic year in order to meet that gap from the time when property taxes begin to roll in, because property taxes aren't coming in until December or January, and we need that cash flow in order to make payroll and do all those nice things that everybody expects to see on Friday.
Exactly.
Okay. Can it, or is it possible, because we've been authorized to borrow, is the borrowing rate better? Is it, or even possible, I'm gonna use a scenario, if 6.9 is borrowed, if we were to borrow additional funds to make up that cash flow, is that a better way to reduce it? Because of our issues, we have dropped in our bond rating for what we had, and now, year over year, we're looking at paying a 33% bump, or actually no, almost 50% bump you have it marked as, or an additional $300,000 in interest that we're paying on that TAN. So we're paying almost $1 million on that TAN's obligation back. Is there a way to combine the two issues, the ongoing or the repeating cash flow issue, by raising, since we have that special act legislation?
Were you saying borrow at the same time?
I'm saying borrow ahead. So if the special act legislation is meant to be a stopgap, right? We want to spread that debt out over the course of time so that we can catch up. We're also borrowing on the TANs. In homeowner parlance, are we getting a cheaper rate out of the the special act legislation versus the TANs? Is there a way to?
No, I think suffice to say that when you're looking at either a bond anticipation note, or a TAN, tax anticipation note, or a RAN, a revenue anticipation note, they're all short-term. So the market looks at that as short-term borrowing. So the rates are normally what they are. What will affect our rates is our potential credit rating.
No, the rate I understand, I guess I was wondering, because the bond anticipation note is something I'm stretching out. Right, the short term is 3 to 4 years?
The bond anticipation note is basically gonna be renewed every year until the district decides to either pay down principal or turn around and sell bonds. A bond anticipation note is temporary financing to fund your cash flow until you get that point where you say, let's say we're into year 3 and we're up to $11 million. And we say, okay, we don't wanna borrow bands anymore. We're gonna call on that special act legislation. We're gonna sell $11 million worth of bonds. And now, from now forward, that's gonna resolve our deficit, and we're gonna have a principal and interest payment for as many years as we decide, 5 years. You know, we don't wanna make it 10.
No, I guess you've answered the question different, but that bond anticipation note is annually renewed. I'm not borrowing 6.9 and stretching it out in payments over the course of 3 years.
Nope.
I'm paying interest only that year when I'm borrowing that money again the following year.
It's a temporary means, you have the authority, go back to the original slide, when I talked about the special act legislation. It gives you the authority to bond. It doesn't mean you have to bond. We can do this whole thing with bond anticipation notes. We can turn around and say, okay, we're borrowing, we're paying interest. Okay, year 3, we wanna put $2 million in the budget to pay down the band. So now you pay $2 million down in the band and you borrow that much less. And you keep going. So you do have the flexibility. You can keep doing short-term financing, and/or you can bond the whole thing and make it permanent. When you bond the whole thing and make it permanent, Chris, to your point, you're spreading it out over multiple years.
That's the part I wasn't understanding, so and then, just from a dollar perspective, the 973.5 on the TANs, what's the gross amount that we usually borrow?
25 to 27 million.
Okay, so that 973 is the interest only on that 27 million.
And that represents about 11 months.
Okay, and a budget planning end, the 630 is representing interest only on the 12 anticipated interest only. It hasn't been put out to the market yet, it's just an anticipated number, but that's the interest only number anticipated on 12.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Trustee Felice has a question.
Okay.
Trustee Felice, are you ready?
Yes, ready. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Belmonte.
You're welcome.
A lot of information to digest, and I just want to go back to the residents who spoke about the transportation proposal, and just say that it's a missed opportunity that we never spoke to the residents who were sending their children to private school. For several years now, I had wanted the superintendent to speak to the families to see what it was we were not offering in our school district that had them bringing their children, sending their children to private school, and we never did. We never spoke to those families to find out why. And we learned today from one of the speakers that said it was their real estate agent who encouraged them to come to South Country because South Country had a very generous transportation policy that encouraged them that they could send their children to any school they wanted because of our transportation policy. Something that we didn't know. And so we also have been wanting to speak to the real estate agents so that they could encourage sending their kids to our school district, sending people who are buying homes here to send them their children to our school district. And it wasn't that at all. They were encouraging people to buy here so that they didn't have to send their children to our district, that they could send them to private schools. So, two things I'm concerned about is they have no intentions of encouraging people to buy here so that they could send their kids to our schools. They're encouraging people to buy here so they won't send their kids to our schools because of our transportation policy. So what is that going to do to people who have told us tonight that they may consider moving out of our district? And what is that going to do to people who may reconsider moving to our district because now they don't have the if they don't have the transportation policy? Those things I think we should be aware of. And had we reached out to those families sooner, we would have known this information before we considered this policy. And I just think the board should bear that in mind, that we could have had this information at hand before we considered a proposal like this. And I just think it's a shame that we didn't have it before putting this proposal forward. Thank you.
Could I ask a procedural question here? And I'm looking at council and Mr. Belmonte and the superintendent for this. We have items for discussion, the budget presentation, and an active questioning with regard to that. But it also is getting into the next item, which is the transportation proposition. Is there a procedural reason why it has to be decided tonight? Is there a timing issue on propositions that
I think your district clerk wants to weigh in.
Okay.
In order for us to get the legal notice published timely, we need to know if this is approved or not, because the next board meeting, we have to approve legal notice so that it gets into the papers timely.
So it could be at the next meeting, right, Chris?
What was that?
So this could be on the agenda for the next meeting.
It could, we'd have to just go over that first and then go and approve
So
I give two options for the legal notice, one with and one without.
So you have one more meeting.
One more meeting, okay. So again, a procedural question. Does that mean we just table it today and put it on the agenda next time? Or procedurally, how do we need to proceed?
You could do that, you could pull it off of the agenda for tonight.
Well, let me get a sense of the board, and I'm bringing this up not to cut off the discussion that we're having about the budget, but just to get that resolved. Is there a sense of the board to remove item F2 from the agenda tonight and instead put it on the agenda of our next meeting?
Yes.
That's fine, I mean, for me.
Yes, yes. I can't
Yeah.
see. Yes, okay.
Trustee Felice, how do you feel about that?
Yes.
And Trustee Pacini?
Well, first, I don't understand what we're gonna know between now and the next meeting on this issue. So I personally would like to know where the board feels about this now, before we put this on to the next meeting. Like, what else are we gonna know that we haven't talked about already tonight between now and then?
I'll speak for myself about what I hope to know between now and then, is to get a firmer understanding of how we can make sure we're at the tax cap of 6.51 without having it reduced in some way.
And I think personally, if that's gonna be the case, I would like that conversation that you would have with Mr. Huntsman and Mr. Santana, what's the next $900,000 gonna be? I think that should be presented to us as well, because I think these are hard decisions that have to be made at some point, so if it's not this, tell me what's next. And I think you said the conversation you would have tomorrow would be with them to tell us what's next. So if it's gonna be, what is that next option? Because we still have $6.9 million to come up with next year, so that's what I wanna know. So if there's a space from now to then be told what that is, then I guess that's okay. Because we have to come up with the money somehow.
My position, it's being tabled. Whether it goes on the next board agenda or not is to be determined. We're saying is the board today that this proposition come off today and it's gonna be considered by the board. It doesn't guarantee that it goes back on the next board agenda, it's just coming off for today. There are numerous options that can be weighed and considered.
So procedurally, does that mean, do we have to necessarily take it off or just not vote on it?
I think we have to table it, because we're not voting on it to decline it. The application, and I would make the motion to table what is today's agenda item F2 for further consideration by the board.
I'm still not understanding what it is we don't know now that we will know in 2 weeks. And to Ann's point, she mentioned the levy limit. are you saying if we take this off of the agenda? I mean, our levy limit can go to 6.51 whether this is in the budget or not, correct?
No. That was that was the problem that was pointed out, that the way this is structured, if there's the transportation proposition and it
Reduces the cap.
fails, the voters don't approve that, then our budget is gonna be at 6.51, but it will include all the $900,000 in transportation.
Yes.
Is that correct?
It doesn't mean that we can't reduce in other areas, to Rob's point, to get that $6.9 million down.
But I think that's what I would like to hear about other areas where we could reduce chunks. So we're within the levy, the tax cap levy limit. And we can look at areas where there can be the substantial savings that you're looking for.
So I'm still struggling understanding this. So if we don't make a change to the busing and the $900,000 stays in the budget, the proposed limit is 6.51%, correct?
Yes. Correct.
If we reduce the $900,000, the levy is 5.25%, but the only difference is that $900,000, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So the district, where does the district gain funds with or without it? Because it seems to me it's whether or not it gets passed along to the taxpayers or not.
Isn't it
Am I understanding that
$900,000 less
correct?
we're
Well,
borrowing?
that was the question I was asking earlier, saying I can't connect the dots on that because I'm not seeing how it gives us.
Hold on, wait a minute, but so if the budget as proposed at 6.51% calls for, I'm sorry, John, 6.9 million in borrowing?
Yes.
Okay.
Almost 7, just under 7.
Okay, so if the budget is reduced by the 900,000 and the transportation issue is approved, our revenue drops because we're no longer having a tax cap of 6.51, we have the tax cap at 5 and change.
That's if you only talk about the transportation referendum. I think what Chris might be alluding to is that nothing prevents us, and it would help the district if we were able to reduce that borrowing by that 6.9 million, that 7 million, by more. Doesn't mean that it has to come from transportation, maybe
No.
it comes from someplace else.
100%, but as I look at everything, whether we talk about state aid and aidable money and how it transitions, like Chris is talking about the net, for the one, if I combine the numbers into a single year, that's not reality. In reality, when you take the 900,000 it costs for transportation, I get 500,000 for a year. Now I'm looking at a multi-year spread for how those monies play out. So it's not practical to sit there and look at it in isolation for a single year. But to Chris's point and to what I'm looking at is if we have a budget cap at 6.51% and it's approved, we get the 6.51%, we cover the $900,000, lending aside. But if we run and have this proposal as written, this proposition on the docket, we still have to borrow $6.9 million next year because we've reduced our revenue by $900,000 because we've reduced the tax cap down a percentage point to reduce the income coming in. So in that single year, keeping things consistent, analysis year to year, not multitude of years. In that single year, if we accept the proposition, we're gonna reduce the income from property tax by $900,000. So it favors the taxpayer and reduces and removes the bus transportation option from those 121 students. We don't borrow $900,000 less in that single year. Have I stated that correctly?
Yeah, it's.
And it's just as it's written. I'm not saying, I agree with you, we have to cut numbers, we gotta find it.
It was one item that was brought up as a
And I understand that, but I'm just trying to make sure I have the numbers, because we keep doing, and I say we, it's me, John, not you, breaking out the analysis, that when we keep saying it, and we heard the speakers tonight as well, the net numbers versus gross numbers, and those numbers all get mixed up. So I'm trying to keep the timeframes consistent, because Chris Pacini, Chris, you could correct me if I'm wrong on that end, he's asking ultimately what the net year effect is on the budget for that, no proposition or proposition.
Can I ask also a question? So that I understand that we're comparing tax levy to tax levy, not budget to budget. So this is a question I'm asking, which I think everybody's alluding to. If the tax levy is at 6.51%, that 6.51% increase only speaks to the tax levy, not the budget.
That's correct.
So that essentially means we'll have $900,000 more in tax property revenue. So I think,
Yes.
I think the question that people are asking, and the board of trustees are asking, so it's important to maintain that revenue in the tax levy portion of our revenue side. Let's see if we can find reductions of $900,000 somewhere else. The counter argument to that, of course, and I think John will appreciate that, is we're still gonna have to find an additional $900,000 reduction, no matter what. This $900,000 just got us closer to that goal. But I understand what the board is trying to say, the trustees are saying that if you just compare tax levy to tax levy, that base number, the $76 million, whatever it was, increases by $900,000.
Correct. So, right, that's right. We realize we need the money. We're gonna have to roll up our sleeves and figure out, as trustee Felicetta is saying, we have to save the money. But we are cutting our nose off to spite our face as it's written. Not that we can't find another solution, but as it's written and as it's described, we're basically giving back to the general public, and excuse the plain language, we're screwing 121 kids and not getting any benefit for the greater good at the end of the day. So I want big chunks. The poor budgeting bothers me from the past in those pieces, and it's 13 million versus 11 million on the years. But we gotta figure out a way to do that, and I don't think we're getting the benefit that we want by losing 900,000, because we do need to lose 900,000, if more, to get to that spot. But that, I don't see the actual benefit to everybody. We just kinda cheat one group and lessen the burden on the other.
And can I say this respectfully, and I'm
Yep.
just saying this as a full respect to everybody that's gonna be involved in this budget process, like I said, that 6.9 million, $900,000 is for teachers. So what else is it? Is it a sports program? Is it a music program? So those are the conversations that we have to seriously start considering. So if it's not $900,000 here, where's the next stop? Is it for teachers next year too?
No,
Because the problem is the 6.9 million is not going away. We have to get rid of that. So I think all these things have to be put on the table, and I feel bad 100% for 121 kids. I think it's something that we have to just have that conversation about, and I think we have to have the conversation about every other component as well. This is just one component that I think we have to present as an option, because we don't have any other options before we start going down that road of where else do we take this money from?
And
There's not many spaces.
But it's not that simple. And from that standpoint, some of this conversation, having it in public, maybe that is the way some of this gets aired out. But we lose debt servicing in 2 to 3 years. So there's a large debt servicing that's gonna disappear, that is no longer on the budget going further. I can't wait though, I gotta make up that gap. We have to run programs, we have to carry it, we have to get to that point. There's also issues that we've talked about before, whether it's hedging our gas fund, because the gas fund is one of the things on the transportation thing that causes us problems. Gas prices go up, the bus company is protected on that end, they don't lose on that contract. So there's other ways for us to figure it out, and I'm not saying it's gonna be easy, but it's also not simple. It's not because we lose $900,000 that we're gonna have to cut 4 teachers. From that standpoint, even losing 2 teachers who are on the senior level, and we're at, I believe, a 40% seniority basis, that as we're losing those teachers, for every 3 teachers we lose, we have the ability to pay 2 more and still save some money as we bring new blood, new people in, as older people are retiring. There's lots of little things. And as John pointed out before, the low-hanging fruit, we've kind of exhausted it. So we gotta get to those numbers in other places, and we gotta get revenues up, but we also face, which is the other part that comes into it, is that we have the facing cost of increasing number on special ed. We have the increasing transportation costs. The medical costs are going up. So frankly, we have to find more than $6.9 million, because we're $6.9 million in a hole. Just from this year to last year, I believe we're looking at a $2 million bump in medical costs that are gonna go there. So we're struggling where those numbers are all over the place. I think there's no simple answer. So I agree with you.
I think it's a bigger conversation of a lot of different things. It's just one
So-
component.
I have one comment, which is I think what's so frustrating is that the only reason we're talking about transportation tonight is because of the procedural requirement of having it decided no later than next meeting. Otherwise, that discussion could be had along with the future presentations that we're gonna have about staffing and healthcare and other saving options. That's just a comment. Trustee Pacini wanted to say something. Yes, no?
I guess a simple question, Mr. Belmonte. If every student that we have that is currently attending private school came back to our schools tomorrow, would our budget situation improve or not?
Would it improve? Our class sizes would probably go up.
Well, I mean, our costs would go up and our revenue wouldn't, correct?
Well, it all depends where the kids land. I mean, that's a theoretical question. The kids might be spread out over multiple grades too.
Yeah, but in very simple terms, without diving into it, right? We still get state aid on the full amount for every student that is eligible to attend our schools, private school or not. And when they attend private school, we're responsible to pay for their busing and their books, and that's it, correct?
That is correct.
So, I guess it goes to my comment originally, right? It sounds penny wise and pound foolish, considering the $400,000 net cost is less than 1/4% of our budget. And when we talk about, well, whatever the real estate agents are telling us, and to be able to quantify that is a little nuts, because the way real estate is on Long Island, I don't really know the school answer to it as much, because there's so low inventory, people just need a place to live. So if we're really gonna look at this, it still is from a revenue standpoint and a cost standpoint, not a negative when a student attends private school in general, without specific, rare instances, correct? So if we're gonna spend all this time talking about less than 1/4% of our budget for a population who has been supportive of our budget and has been, overwhelmingly yes votes on our budget, it just seems like we should be looking somewhere else.
Do you have any
That's
recommendations,
basically-
Mr. Pacini?
And I'm a no, and I'll end it here because we've been talking about it for a while. I'm a no on this resolution, and I think I've made all my points. Thank you.
All right. The procedure for tabling is,
It is a sub-motion, so there's a
What?
motion. It's a sub-motion, so there's a motion to adopt the resolution, then there's a sub-motion to table the resolution, to lay it on the table, and then once you do that, it'll be ready for the next board meeting. So you'll lay it
Okay.
on the table
So
until the
put it-
next board meeting.
so have the motion made. Does it have to be seconded?
Yes.
A motion, second,
Then
and then a
discussion.
motion to table, and that gets seconded.
Right, so you're gonna
And-
table it to the next board meeting. And then you vote on that motion.
And we'll vote on the tabling motion.
Yes.
All right. Does anybody want to make a
We didn't make a motion on this. Why can't this item just be pulled from the agenda?
You can also do that.
well, that's easier.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I started with that earlier.
Okay, well, somehow I didn't hear that part.
So-
I heard that we had to go through this
so
complicated thing.
we're just
So
pulling
we'll
it.
just take F2 off the agenda tonight.
Is there consensus as to?
I have no objection, that's fine.
Can you just delete it from on here, or I can? when we do the minutes.
Yeah, so President Hayes has made a motion to remove that agenda
F2.
item.
Okay.
Okay, now you need a second.
Second the motion.
Second, all in favor? Okay, everybody at the table agreed to remove it? Okay,
Trustee Felice, do you? Yes.
yes. All right, so we've at least cleared that part of the agenda for tonight. Is there more discussion or questions that people want to have with Mr. Belmonte? On,
Mr. Belmonte has a question.
Belmonte has a question.
he does,
He does.
okay,
Can I ask a question?
absolutely.
I keep going back to, it's necessary to discuss everything. And we understand that some things people are more passionate about than others. Is there something specifically that the board would like to see as we collaboratively make this challenge to cut another $7 million from the total budget? So are there areas or, so I just, we bring the board suggestions, and to get into a debate on right, wrong, that's fine. But is there something specific that the board would like to see in this budget or would like us to address?
I think we gotta put it all on the table. I bet be the first one to say it, put it all, we have to put sports, we have to put music, we have to put everything. We gotta start comparing things, because we can't get out of this without it. So that's what I've heard, that we have $7 million to make up, right? So nobody wants to make any cuts, but we have $7 million to make up, so I guess put it all out there, give us presentations on what the different categories would look like.
Wait a minute, but that's not fair. You can't just say, so you gotta be specific. So at least we discussed, you brought it up tonight, that there's the issue with the two different health plans. Is there a benefit, even if it's just a layperson, even if it's based on your experience, is there a benefit, whether it's budgeting wise or controlling cost wise going forward, with regard to the difference between NISHIP and the healthcare triad that we're currently in? We're looking at a 13.25% increase year after year, not to mention potentially a mid-year increase as they passed along to us last year. Is there a difference from NISHIP?
Yeah, Chris, we can certainly look at that, but I think we have to also look at the quantitative compassion that the people, the members, have for the plan. Because that's
I agree.
That's another aspect, because they're very passionate about the plan. And that there's a reason why a school district would belong to a self-insured plan. It's because they have that direct management. They have the input into the decision-making, which you don't have when you're with a NISHIP. So I'm giving you the other side of that argument, but it's something that, certainly we can take a look at.
And I agree that again, same thing, there's no simple answer to what's there.
Correct.
And I also, just on the other board members, don't lose sight, this isn't necessarily just about cutting, but it's also about generating revenue. And sometimes that means thinking outside the box, and from that end, I've always thought that we exist, at least in a world where there are, whether it's groups like the South Country Education Fund or other granting organizations that we don't take as much advantage of. And I don't know that we know enough as a board member to look at those things or encourage, but how can we add revenue and monies to our programs that are then supported by those grants and generating things? So not necessarily something that has to consider tonight, but the idea of raising revenue is not, cutting is not the only way to make up that gap.
That is correct. And as an administrative team, we're gonna discuss additional reductions. So we'll put multiple things on the table for the board to ponder. Because like I said, there was, like we said, or trustee Felicetta's point, there is a operating deficit that's present for this year. There'll be an operating deficit for next year. The idea is, how do we reduce that?
I just want to add a comment to John's question as to where you want to see cuts. I guess, for a number of years now, we've been talking about NISHIP versus the reciprocal that we're in, with the three other districts. And I guess I've never really gotten a clear-cut answer as to what is a cost savings, right? Because when you talk about people loving the plan, well, there's only 3 districts left in it, so how much could it be beloved by, teachers throughout the county? So I'd really like to understand if night shift is cheaper than the reciprocal we're in. And then I'd really like to understand why, if there's only 3 districts in this and they need us, why we don't have more power, sway, however you want to put it, over what these costs are. Because I have to think if we stepped away from this reciprocal, it probably falls apart. Am I wrong?
You're probably right.
So how do we not have any leverage to negotiate rates, when we have that type of power? And the same goes for the other schools. And I believe Ward Melville, it's in their contract, so they really can't voluntarily leave. But Smithtown can. So I guess I can't understand why we're continue to hold ourselves hostage to this specific program unless you tell me it's significantly cheaper.
Well, we can provide the board with that cost analysis.
Do we know off the top of our heads if we think it's cheaper, or do we have any?
We are currently working on that analysis. I wouldn't give you an answer off the top of my head. The rates are different, there are different timings in the year. We gotta average things, it's not as simple as that.
And so I think that without that information, I don't understand how we can even have the conversation as to what to do here, as to where we wanna see things. Because I would say health insurance would be the first place I wanna take from, because it's consistently the largest driver to our increases year over year. So that would make the most sense. So I think we need that information before we can really move on.
So just as a point of clarification, there is language in the teacher contract with regards to the healthcare plan and the trust agreement. So we would have to look at that as well. And sometimes that's subject to collective bargaining, so these are not the types of conversations that we can necessarily have, but we'll look at the contractual language as well.
Well, I think only the employee contribution part is what would be considered confidential, correct?
No, there is language in the contract, which I don't have off the top of my head, that speaks to our participation in the consortium.
So you're saying that it may be within our BTA contract with the BTA that we're in this consortium?
To a certain extent.
I mean, because that's something the board should have known for a long time. If that would be news to me. I've been here 14 years, so.
There's language, I mean, I
The
could.
topic of coming in and out of this consortium is not new. So.
Can I just defer? Go ahead.
So I don't mean to interrupt, Pat Brady, Bellport Teachers Association, I'm the president. So along with the trust agreement, which the district has been part of, I'll say the second tier since it began years ago, there is language not only in the contract and the trust agreement of means of the district and the local unions to be involved. Now, we just keep saying BTA. I believe along in the trust agreement is not just the BTA, okay? Within that is all of us who are part of the consortium, who are part of SCHP, which that would include the BTA, it would include anyone who is in the administrative association, I believe, anyone who is part of the BTAA that opts into the health care. So it's everyone that's involved in the consortium, okay? So I'm happy to share that, again, the trust agreement with the district. The district has had it longer than I've had it, because the district has been involved in the consortium longer than I've been in the district. So I will be happy to share that again, but like we're opening up things here, I think that I feel shouldn't be discussed right now. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to share it. I'll have it to Mr. Belmonte tonight, and he can distribute that in any means necessary to the board or wherever else you get.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, so have we exhausted questions and discussion on F1 right now? Okay. So now we're gonna go to F3.
Item 3 is the proposed consolidated school calendar. One of the modifications we looked at, and something that's not been typically done here, is to bring kids in before Labor Day. The reason we're proposing this calendar is because it gives us greater flexibility in the school year to navigate the additional holidays that have been sort of adopted by New York State, and some flexibility when it comes to closures as a result of snow days.
And this is consistent with the BOCES calendar?
Yeah, it's consistent with actually the majority of districts in our cluster.
Does anybody, I see a question?
Well, I was comparing it to the last year's calendar. Well, no, current year, I'm sorry, the 25, 26. And it looks like the days per month of instruction are the same.
Right.
I don't know if anybody else has looked at that. So it's really just the question of coming in before Labor Day that makes this calendar different than ones we've done in the past.
Correct. And so it does give us the option of, for example, adding that Wednesday before Thanksgiving, that flexibility. And so in terms of like, with the 180 days that we have instructionally here, it does, from my understanding, and again, the sort of the jury is still out and how snow days are applied or not applied with regards to the state, because we're still waiting for that clarification. But this does afford us some more flexibility in terms of how we spread our instructional days out.
Can I ask, what's September 4th and September 7th?
September 4th is just in case people go away for Labor Day. It's the Friday before, and the 7th is actual Labor Day, so that is a holiday.
Can I make a comment? The superintendent made a comment about the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
When did this become a day off? I mean, I know it's been around every now and then, but like, we're sitting here scrambling for snow days and we're given days off in November that I don't really understand why.
Historically, Trustee Puccini, think back, Dr. Gianni was here, and there was a year when there was the availability of an, air quotes, extra day. And I know there was some discussion with employees about what they would like, and it was the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and I get that, but like, when we sit here at the end of February coming into March, and we now get snow again in Long Island, it just doesn't seem sensible to give days off that early. And at the end of the day, as a parent, so now you might as well just give the whole week off. Now it's a 2-day school week, then December is almost 2 weeks off. There's multiple days off for holidays in January. February's a break. End of March into April's another break. I mean, it's just, it seems silly for this to become, because it's getting to a point where this is now going to become the way the Friday after Thanksgiving was 30 years ago. People used to go to work, now it's a day off. I mean, we gonna give the whole week off? It seems silly. And by the way, nobody else has this day off, so we create a huge daycare issue for parents who are not in education.
Actually, I disagree. I think there are several districts that have the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I think we're one of the few who don't offer it off.
That is correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this one also, that day is a very high absentee rate for students because people try to get a jump start on the Thanksgiving holiday.
But I do think, and we did provide the board with a comparison of all the proposed calendars. I do think that is a common day that's off in school districts.
So everybody else does it, so we should do it. It's just, like I said, we're sitting here scrambling for days and wondering about waivers, and we want to give an extra day off in November. I just don't get it, and you place a huge burden on parents who aren't in education, whose kids are now off, and they have to go to work, because the rest of the world goes to work the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Just my 2 cents, whatever you want to do, but I'm a no on that.
Chris, is there another day that you think would be better?
I really don't. I mean, I don't care, come in earlier, do we need, I mean, do we need Friday before Labor Day off? I mean, we end up losing that day every year anyway. I don't know what we have to have versus not, but, you know, I mean, the multiple, I mean, where are it's hard to see on my computer, I can't blow it up, but, you know, how many conference days do we have?
That has not changed, it's 3 conference days.
3 conference days. How many of them are during the day when no parents can show up?
There are parents who show up, I'm one of them.
Yeah, but there's very few. During the day, on the work day, I mean, you know, and I understand some of them are contractual, I really do, but, you know, again, giving extra days off before the winter just seems foolish.
Do we need the full week of spring break?
Yeah, we want to be consistent with other school districts, so yes.
There are 17 days off between November and February. Out of roughly 80 days.
So what if we put the day before Thanksgiving back and do an extra day on Memorial Day, like has been done in the past?
That's an option. We could also have 184 instructional days as well, by adding the 1 day back.
And that'll
That builds in the snow day.
gives us the snow days.
So what I'm hearing is, I don't know if there's consensus from the trustees that you want to table this as well.
Listen, from a teacher's standpoint, I know, I and my wife bragged that they'll take the Memorial Day extended if you don't use the snow day, to take the extension on that end. You know, you're tiring out, it's year's end, it's a break at that point. I agree with Chris to a degree on this, that when you get those starting before Labor Day is not an objectable thing, but when you work in for 2 days and that's a day off, like, I hear them, and I'm not the one teaching, I could never do it, I praise everybody who can, don't have the patience, but to get into that rhythm, to start getting things going, you come in for 2 days and they kind of, they just falls apart.
2
So-
days really isn't building a rhythm though. 2 days is, you come in, you get your syllabus, you drop off your supplies, you set up your desk.
Right.
And then you come back, you do that the first 2 days because there are teachers who don't put out supply, like especially when you get into the upper grades, you don't get that beautiful supply list that you do in elementary. So you have people scrambling to try to get the right folders and things at Staples. But giving those 2 days to get that stuff taken care of, and then you come back in on the 8th, on Tuesday, and you are now ready to go.
Yeah, the 2 days gives an opportunity for teachers to really take care of logistics. So it doesn't take away from instructional time, and then the continuity really begins on the 8th.
Because whether those days are the second and third or 8th and 9th, those first 2 days are just setting up your classroom.
Well, can we just agree, at least on September, to start before Labor Day as shown?
That I agree with.
So, all right, so July, August, September, and October, we can agree on those. And then the only question is, the day before Thanksgiving, and whether or not that should go over
To the 27th of May.
to the 27th. Any,
No objection to that. I have no objection to that.
anybody else?
I would personally leave it as is.
I'm sorry?
I would personally leave it as is.
That does match with William Floyd,
Matches,
correct?
yeah, most is local
So
districts.
this is like William Floyd.
Yep, correct.
So you
Like
get
most
the day
local
off, you get the day off
Yeah.
before Thanksgiving.
Yep, we actually do it as a emergency day where we actually have a rapid release at the end of the day on Tuesday, so staff can get out early and on their way.
All right, so that being said, what we're looking at here is consistent with surrounding districts. So then, basically, this is what it is for this year, and part of it is because of the way the holidays fall.
Correct.
So, does anybody want to make a motion to approve this calendar? Trustee DeLillo, second by trustee Calderon. Questions, discussion, seeing none, all in favor? Everybody at the table, yes?
Trustee Felice? You're in favor, trustee Puccini?
No, I'm opposed.
Okay. All right, so it's 6 in favor and 1 opposed. So the motion carries.
Next is the charter school resolution. It's basically, this is sort of a ceremonial resolution to show support of our advocacy efforts as the sort of the impact of charter schools on Long Island is getting greater and greater, impacting school districts in a disproportionate manner at this point. The fear is that there's a sort of a movement to expand them. Just to give you some sort of context, charter schools are basically private schools that are funded by taxpayer money. They have the right to reject students. They don't serve the entire public, like public schools do. We service everybody who lives in our community. They don't have the same regulatory oversight as public schools. So obviously, from our perspective as public school people, it's not something that we sort of support. What this resolution says is that we basically, the Board of Education authorizes the board president to submit a correspondence to NYSBA to fight in this advocacy effort. One of the things we're looking to do is to have sort of local control over the establishment of charter schools within our school boundaries. So in other words, if someone proposed building a charter school in our community, the community would be able to vote on whether or not this is something they're interested in or not.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Trustee Ross, second by trustee Felicetta. All in favor? Everyone at the table, yes?
Trustee
Yes.
Puccini? Yes.
And I can't see Miss.
Both trustee Puccini and trustee Felice. vote
Okay,
yes.
then it's unanimously approved. All right, so now we're going to G.
The administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in Schedules G1 through G3.
Is there a motion to approve G1 through G3? Trustee DeLillo, second by trustee Calderon. Questions? All in favor? Everyone at the table?
Trustee
And
Puccini.
I see trustee Felice.
Just trustee Felice. Trustee
Okay,
Puccini's gone.
so 6 in favor, and I think trustee Puccini's absent for the vote?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're on,
Personnel.
yeah.
The administration recommends approval of agenda items located in H1 through H7.
Is there a motion to approve H1 through 7? Trustee Ross, second trustee Falsetta. Questions? All in favor? Everyone at the table? And a yes, trustee
Felice,
Felice. So 6 yes, and trustee Puccini's absent. Okay, so H1 through H7 is approved. And now we have I.
Business items. The administration recommends approval of business items reflected in Schedules I1 through I6.
A motion to approve I1 through I6. Trustee DeLillo, second by trustee Calderon. All in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor, everyone at the table, and trustee Felice, so all 6 in favor. The motion is approved.
I just want to quickly congratulate Mr. Brian Ginty, principal currently at 6th grade in the middle school, on his retirement.
And is there a card that somebody wants to speak?
Anybody have a card?
Yes.
Currently on the business agenda, was that through 1 through 6 or 1 through 7?
4 through 6.
1 through 6.
7 on.
We added,
They added
Oh.
7.
Sorry, I did not update. I'm looking off my
you have
different.
to
Yeah, just do it
update.
as a separate item.
All right, we
Yeah,
did
it is a
1
separate
through
item.
6, so we can now do,
No, I have to refresh, sorry.
yeah,
Seven
that's
re-
what
seven
I'm doing,
remains is
and
the
it's
fiscal
taking
advisor
forever.
notice.
So we have to
Oh.
approve just
I7.
A7.
I7.
Okay, so the administration recommends approval of business items reflected in I7.
Which
Motion?
is, Mine's not
It's the
coming up.
fiscal advisor.
That's the fiscal
Oh, yes,
advisors,
yes,
so motion to,
right. A motion by trustee Ross, second trustee Felicetta. All in favor? Everyone at the table and trustee Felice, it's unanimously approved. Thanks for catching that one.
Thank you, Mr. Belmont.
Even at this late hour,
At
sharp.
this late hour, you still picked that up for us, I thank you.
Cold vacation.
Okay, so, wait, what?
Don't worry about it.
Okay, meeting. All right, I don't think there's anything else.
No, there's no cards.
Closing,
Anybody have anything?
anybody have closing remarks?
no.
None at the table. No closing remarks. Is there a motion to adjourn? Trustee Felicetta, second trustee Ross, all in favor of adjournment? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.